Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. We have a quorum. And Nancy, you've got attendance there?
I do.
Okay, then let's move to our old business. We have minutes from June 1st. Any additions, changes?
I just wanted to let people know that I had gotten a request for some changes from both Lois and from Elizabeth, and those changes have been made. We were errant misspellings and an errant word or two.
Okay, did that include about midway down the first page, the meeting was called to order at 6:03, and that paragraph finishes with he.
Yes, that does.
Okay, I
That
thought that was a fill in the blank and people could fill in anything they wanted about me there. So, all right, thank you. So no other comments? Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
Moved by Mr. Berman, seconded by Lois. All in favor, please raise your hands. Bob Ike, you got your hand up?
No, I abstained. I was absent on June 1st.
Okay,
I abstained.
okay. By the way, Robert's rules not necessary. You can always approve minutes even if you were not there.
I'm in favor. I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you. All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We have a real full slate tonight. A lot of information, decision making. I really hope there's a lot of discussion, a lot of questions, a lot of comments from everybody. I just wanted to first fill everybody in on, I made a presentation to the Town Council Subcommittee, Admin and Education a week ago, Monday. Similar presentation I made to the Town Council on Monday night as well. Tom Romanoli from Downs joined me for both occasions. Thank you, Tom. And I just want to reiterate a couple messages that I had sent to the Town Council. Number one being that we are at a crossroads because we're over budget at this tail end of schematic design. Number two, that our team, our professional team, has made many recommendations to us, and that I felt that all of the recommendations, except one, let's be very careful here. I said all of the recommendations did not compromise any of the functionality or programming or aesthetics until we got to the point of talking about cutting square footage. So I did say that to the Town Council. And then I also shared with them that last item. What we're looking at is the potentially cutting square footage. And I want to bring that up right now. Again, what I shared with the Town Council. We're going to see it over and over again. But Tom, would you, Tom, Scott, who's got that?
Yeah, I can bring it up.
I just want everybody to see this again, including people from the public who are looking, who perhaps could not have attended these other meetings. This is a summary of our square footage over the history of this project so far. We have an existing square footage in total of about 26,000 square feet between Prosser and McMahon. We went to referendum with a total gross area of about 36,900 square feet. Want to highlight that for me there, Scott, the 36,900, so everybody sees that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what we went to referendum with. We came out of schematic design with a system total of 39,445. I want to highlight that. And so the idea of cutting square footage has basically been to bring us back to the referendum amount. So what we're going to be looking at, what we looked at a few weeks ago, what TSKP is going to present again tonight, is revised plans with a total gross area of the 36,640 for the two buildings. So we're very, very, very close to what we promised our people at referendum. I've just been hearing that we were asked to make cuts above and beyond, and it's just not true. Nobody's made a suggestion that we cut more than what was promised. I think that's a really critical factor in keeping all this in perspective. So we want to look at the specifics of that, what that means. We're going to do that tonight. So we're going to first go to Elizabeth for her director's report.
Thank you, Mark. So I just have a few comments. Specifically, I wanted to start with reminding everybody that this referendum passed with 83% yes vote, and this referendum passed with information from the community and community surveys and extensive outreach. And we did promise a lot. We promised 21st century libraries. And when we contracted with the consultants, specifically Leslie Berger, who is excellent, and I'm so thankful for her work in getting us where we were. The first numbers for Prosser were 35,000 square feet. And I know Councilor Merritt Monday night brought up the fact that if you go to neighboring towns, none of their main locations are smaller than 40,000 square feet. And that's for towns that are smaller than us as well, including Avon with a population of 18,900. They have a 40,000 main location. Simsbury, population 24,500. They have a 42,000 square foot main library. As we move down this road, I think we really need to keep this in mind, because we're not building Prosser for now, we're building Prosser for decades. And I'm worried that by bringing up these cost complications so late, we're kind of really down the road of cuts, including the 1.4 million. And I know that Mark Monday night said multiple times that these cuts do not compromise functionality, programming, or aesthetics, and I completely disagree with that. There's 56 items on that cut list, and I'm wondering, if we had to prioritize them, which ones are really the least painful and we'll really never notice, and which ones we are definitely going to notice. And I'm talking about the acoustical experience, the programming experience. We don't want a library where everything's so crushed together that you walk in and you hear the person having a conversation by the fireplace and the person who's trying to work on a paper at the computer there. We want space. We want a welcoming environment. We want an environment that does not include library anxiety. So people who do not feel comfortable in our spaces are felt anxious as the moment they walk in. I'm hoping that, as Mark stated, that we're able to really talk all timelines, all solutions, and that we're able to brainstorm as much as possible. And I know we have some short timelines, but again, I want to remember sunk costs and make sure that we get this right. This community has been waiting way too long for a project that may not be big enough or green enough. And that is also important. And I'm worried that some of these amazing initiatives that our community is expecting is going to come on the chopping block. And I don't want to be short-sighted with that. And I, again, want to remind everybody that when Prosser was built, the day it opened, the then director knew it was too small. We do not want to repeat that mistake. But I want to hand it over to Allison Wilkos for the rest of the director's report. Allison is the newly promoted assistant director of Bloomfield Public Library. She's been on the ground floor between TSKP's team and our staff in terms of compiling all relevant information about this, and she could speak more expertly about some of this. Allison.
All right, thank you. My role in the library building process has been to work closely with staff about our vision for services and workflows in the new buildings. I have been intimately involved in the process of gathering feedback from staff, what it means to truly deliver services in these buildings day to day, and then translating those needs into the building schematics. I wanted to bring some library staff feedback to you tonight as we have reviewed all the recent proposed plans for Prosser. There are specific staff concerns, including the fact that the children's room is too small. Children love the library because we offer the full experience. This includes books, crafts, toys and play spaces, and story times. At our most recent Prosser story time, we had over 40 attendees, including babies, toddlers, and preschool children. Our children's librarians described it as a robust and high energy experience. Our staff has witnessed so much personal growth from the children who come to our library and benefit from the social setting. Another omission from the plans is that there is no oven and stovetop in the cafe kitchen. The community room is being planned with a linoleum floor instead of carpeting, which will affect acoustics and aesthetics. Moving the community room storage to the lower level is counterproductive for library and custodial staff who change the room layout on a daily basis, sometimes more than once a day. The community room seating capacity would be lower than depicted because, as it appears, is frankly not a realistic setup for the room. We require a center aisle, and the chairs with arms take up more space and are required by some patrons. One of our staff leads on the programming team, who has a lot of experience in libraries outside of Bloomfield, shared the following comment, quote, "Anything less than the bare minimum 100-person seating capacity in the community room will be doing a disservice to programming in libraries, our community, and the efforts staff has been making to make BPL programming shine. It would be, in all honesty, embarrassing for library staff as professionals in the Connecticut library community if we build a new library with an inadequate program space," end quote. With the proposed cuts, this comment applies to the entire building project. After more than a decade of plans and failed attempts at a new Prosser building, please don't fail again by shortchanging your project when we can explore alternatives like additional funding and alternate timelines. Librarians do their due diligence, and we need the building committee's help and support to explore other options besides cutting the project. I do not mean just cutting the square footage, but all the value management cuts, which absolutely do compromise the functionality, programming, and aesthetics of the library. Library staff have painstakingly poured our expertise into these plans for over a year and a half, and the reality is that Prosser is just too small. It was already too small when we went to referendum, and it's progressively getting smaller with each phase of this building project. When the project is complete, library staff will have to deal with the daily repercussions of an inadequate facility, as well as absorb the feedback from the community. And trust me, our public is not shy when they talk to staff. I am worried about library staff morale and employee retention if we are not able to come to work and do our jobs with sufficient resources and space. I'm worried about the burden of these compromised plans on our facilities and custodial staff. Please give us a building of which we can be proud, a legacy of which we can all be proud. We're not afraid of hard work. It's what got us here today. I'm happy to provide expanded explanations on all of my talking points tonight, as they are not simple problems. Thank you for your final consideration.
Elizabeth, do you have more? You're muted.
That was it. The only final thing to add is that the library board is also 100% behind these sentiments. We had a library board meeting last night where we discussed all of these things. And I think there'll be some comments from the library board tonight, but I just wanted to reiterate that all of them are on board with what we are saying. We also voted to move forward with
You're freezing up, Elizabeth.
Mantonberry Library. And that's it. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Elizabeth, you froze up.
Elizabeth,
You
you
voted
froze
to
up
move
at the end
forward
of
with-
that. You're frozen.
I just
now.
wanted to say that we are moving forward with the $1 million grant for McMahon Wittenberg.
Okay, thank you. Allison, thank you very much. Congratulations on your promotion. Those kind of comments are wonderful. You know, we've been seeking specific responses to things. We're going to have a lot more opportunity tonight to do more of that. So thank you for that. Bob Berman, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Elizabeth. Avon, Simsbury, the other towns you cited, do they have branch libraries or just the one library?
Okay, Avon does not have a branch library. Simsbury does not have a branch library. Windsor does have a branch library. Weathersfield does not have one. And Farmington, their total square footage is 61,300 for a population size of 26,000. But that does include a second location. So I'm not sure exactly what it is, but yes, Avon is only one library and it's 40,000 square feet for a population size of 18,900. And that brings up a great point though, Bob, because I do invite all library building committee members to visit these other towns that are very close by, some of which have smaller population sizes than us, and see what their main location is. And as I stated at the last library building committee, all of these towns also have libraries in all of their schools that are with professional librarians. Bloomfield does not have any professional librarians in the schools.
Other questions for Elizabeth or Allison? Okay, just looking for hands up. Thank you. All right, let's go on to TSKP. This is all related tonight. So here's TSKP. Oh, and let me interrupt you for one before we get going. Erica Coleman has joined us on the phone. She is our newest committee member. So I want to welcome her. And Erica, can you just say hello? You're muted. She's on the phone, so I don't know how easy that technology is. All right, we'll come back to you, Erica. All right, TSKP.
Hi, can
there
you
go.
hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't know how to unmute either on through the cell phone, but I should be able to get on video in like 5 minutes.
Great.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for welcoming me.
All right, now let's move on to TSKP, please.
Great, thanks very much, Mark. Again, for the record, I'm Richard Sipek. Sitting next to me is Jeanette O'Connell. Jeanette is our interior planner, interior designer, and sitting next to Jeanette is Taisu Kim. So this evening, what we've done is prepared some graphic material for the committee's consideration. Last week, at the end of last week, we sent to the committee through the chair some sketches, some diagrams of furniture layouts for your consideration. But I think tonight we'd like to supplement that with some additional material. At the previous building committee, we did show you how we could reduce square footage in order to offset the cost increases that have occurred. Once again, we're living in unusual times. We're experiencing cost increases that are not anybody's fault. They're just market conditions. They're residual effect of the pandemic and now the war that is ongoing. As a consequence, there's a supply chain problem and cost increases having to do with anything that uses fuel and steel. So we're endeavoring to try to meet that budget gap as a consequence of all of these market forces. And that's why the idea of reducing square footage has been discussed by Downs and by us and briefly discussed with the building committee. So if I am allowed to share my screen, what I would like to do is share with you the graphics that we prepared for tonight.
Go ahead, you have screen sharing ability.
Okay. All right, are we good? Can you see that?
We're good.
Yes, we
Great,
can.
so, okay, great. This is just a reminder of what we showed you last time. It's a side-by-side comparison of the schematic design as presented when we were finished with schematic design. That's the diagram on the left. And the diagram on the right is a reduction of square footage, as you can see. And as was pointed out by Mark at the last committee meeting, well, an average person really can't tell what the impact is on their operations in this kind of a space diagram. What was really necessary to actually show some furniture drawn to scale. So we did that. And so these two diagrams now on a side-by-side basis compare the previous schematic design before we had the cost analysis, and this is the schematic design that could be implemented should the committee agree with a square footage reduction. Both of them show furniture and equipment, as you can see here. And what I'd like to do now is zoom in on the proposed square footage reduction. So what we asked Jeanette to do is to do a side-by-side comparison of the square footage here. And so she can talk about that briefly. What Jeanette has done is looked at the program carefully. She verified that the volume capacity, the shelving capacity has not been compromised, has met the requirements. And we also have not changed the seat count, and we have not reduced the staff spaces. So the staff that you see here is exactly the same quantity that was presented previously in the schematic design. In a minute, I'm going to ask Jeanette to give us a brief overview of these spaces. And so Jeanette, if you could do that.
Sure. So as Richard mentioned, I did look at all what was called for in the building program for the collection size, and went through to make sure that we were able to meet that. And we did it in all areas. So that was the first thing, going through and making sure all the ranges could accommodate the collection size. And then the other thing was all the IT pieces. And you know, where the pack stations are, and the OPAC stations. So none of that has been reduced. We've met all of that criteria.
Okay, so what you see here is a hand-drawn diagram of furniture and shelving drawn to scale. So these shelving units are low shelving units.
Correct.
The shelving units that are along the wall are taller, but in the children's area, these are low stacks for
So
the sake of visibility.
actually along the wall, I believe there's some windows. So yeah, so those are lower against the wall.
Oh, I'm sorry, so there's glass here?
Yeah, above.
But as you go into that room, yeah, to the right-hand side, those are taller.
These are along the wall, okay.
Right. But the majority of them are like 42, 48 inches high.
In children's area.
In the children's area,
Okay.
but they're taller.
Adult area will be taller.
Right, so as far as your visibility, you still have great visibility throughout the space. And also, you know, as you're going along and you're designing, things are changing all the time, and you kind of make some adaptations. And this elevation has sort of changed from the previous plan, and so we try to work with that with the architecture as well, and making sure aesthetically and functionally you can do things within these spaces. And so in here we have the children's area, and then as Richard said, the staff has not been reduced at all. We're still able to accommodate what was there. We flipped this space over here, the collaboration on this side, and you enter into the teens area through this space. Again, it's this very similar in that it does have a librarian in there, someone to oversee, make sure everybody's behaving. The pack stations, and then there was tall cafe seating for the children and tables, study tables. I don't know if we want to flip back to the other so you can just see the difference. It's a little hard to see, but
Yeah, actually, I do want to make one observation here. So in the previous schematic plan, we had a teen area that was this big. And these two drawings on the left and on the right are drawn at the same scale. You can see the teen area in this scenario is smaller, but this is what the program called for. In the previous schematic version, this was much larger than what the program called for. I think that's an important point to make.
Okay.
Anything else on this floor plan?
so as we go into the adult area, there's only really, it calls out for 2 people at the circ desk, but we showed 3 chairs. Staffing over in this area stayed the same. We kept the OPAC stations. This remains the same. Over here, these tables, the count's a little bit different, but we put more tables on the second floor in the adult area. So you still have ample tables. And then these again are, these are stacks there. I think what we did, it all meets the program. I think we did, I don't have it on here, but they might be taller. They might be at maybe 66 inches high, but you still have a visual because of the orientation of the shelves. So the quantity between the second floor and this floor for the stacks, which was like 31,000, is met. And you still have seating, some comfortable seating by the fireplace over here. And then seating by these windows, and some goes underneath that staircase. This actually works better than the other layout, having these tables along here. You actually get more seating down at this area for the kitchen. Elizabeth, or Allison, you had mentioned that there was no oven, and what did you feel was missing? We got feedback in the kitchen area here.
Stove.
Oven with a stove top, a full oven.
Okay, so I don't see why we couldn't fit something in there. I mean, you've got a refrigerator and a sink, so as far as the square footage, you could fit something in there. And on the scale of things, I don't think adding that is gonna.
Yeah, it does. However, if you are preparing food here, then you do have to go through a formal review by the health department. If you're serving food to the public, it's a higher grade of kitchen. So that means stainless steel finishes, scrubbable surfaces. It's more of a commercial kitchen. Even though you're serving smaller quantities of food, it's still considered a public service of food to the public. And so it does need health department reviews. It just means a more expensive kitchen, but it is achievable.
And a lot of libraries are catering, caterers bring in their own foods and. Anyway, then over here in the community room, without a center aisle, you could easily meet that 100 chairs. It was mentioned that a center aisle would be preferred. So if we did create a center aisle, we would be a little less than that 100 count.
Yeah, so, and I also want to mention that what the comment we heard tonight about the storage of chairs or other equipment for the community space would be on the lower level. This is true. We did make that revision so that in order to create more space here, we had to put storage downstairs. I should point out that this is still a work in progress, but we did want to give you an illustration to give you a sense of the size of these rooms. So if the storage needs to come back to this level, we'd have to tweak the plan some more.
Right.
Can we go to the second floor? Okay, again, we showed the last time just some diagrams that showed square footage changes. We did flesh that out with furniture and equipment now. The thing that jumps out immediately to my eye is all of this shelving that was shown here in the previous version before the reduction in square footage is quite a bit, and now it shows less. However, when you combine this shelving with the shelving that Jeanette was explaining on the lower level, we do meet the programmatic requirements. But one of the things that we have improved, I think, is the training areas and the meeting rooms. So it's a give and take. This is still a work in progress, but I hope that these illustrations of furniture and equipment give you a better sense of scale. So now if we look at the enlargement of the second floor, you can see what Jeanette said a few minutes ago about increasing the seating on the upper floor here was accomplished. Let's go back a second. So this is what we showed previously, some tables and chairs, and now we have much more space over here. And actually, it's a wonderful space with casual seating as well. Jeanette, can you maybe highlight a few things?
Yeah, so I mean, everything as far as your count works, and as Richard said, it was pretty tight in here before. It was very, very tight. So by making this a little bigger, you know, it became a lot more comfortable. One of your comments was making sure people feel comfortable when they're in these spaces. And so this was one area we thought was a little tight and then definitely needed to be expanded, which we did. And the other thing to note is that it did not impact the count in your lockers. So we have the same footprint of the lockers that we had for the staff. Same thing for seating accommodations. So really everything, all the admin spaces are the same. So those haven't changed. And the historical storage area in here is the same. So upstairs is pretty much the same.
We did prepare a summary chart as well. I would like to share that with you. Oh, one more thought. So the lower level, we really haven't changed that since the last time you saw it. It really doesn't require furniture and equipment layout to give you a sense of it. But there could be storage down here for the community room. I mentioned that before. So here's the summary chart I just mentioned. I think to try to put things in perspective, we are reporting the existing process square footage. And this is all, this table shows net square footage. Some people refer to that as usable square footage. That's the area on the interior of each room. So if we look at what you currently have in the Prosser, and then after we did the square footage reductions, this is where we ended up today. This is still subject to modification, but as of the diagrams that we just showed you, you can see that the adult area is increased by 1,200 square feet, a little more than 1,200 square feet, or a 22% increase of what you currently have. The children's area also is increased about 10%. The teen center, that's a big increase because you don't have a teen center right now. Staff area has also grown, as you can see, 53%. Meeting and training spaces have grown, and other spaces such as the cafe and kitchenette have also grown. So the total net square footage, this is the usable square footage, has gone from your existing 13,424 square feet to 18,597 square feet. So overall, it's about a 39% increase in square footage. I know that's difficult to grasp sometimes for people, but I hope that the furniture and equipment layouts do give you some sense of the spaces and their sizes. I'd be happy to answer any questions or go back to any particular slide if you want to discuss it in greater detail.
All right, questions for the design team. Let's see. Ava, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you. In the materials that you sent us that we actually had time to read, on page 12, you talk about the community room. It said 97 seats before, it says 80 seats now in that smaller space. Now you're talking about 100, so which is it?
So basically, there's 96 seats with 4 additional seats at the table. So there's 11 across times 8, and then that last row.
Okay,
Also
I
depends.
have definite questions about those. I know that in some public spaces, there are requirements for the seats being attached or snapping together. There are requirements for aisles. We have to meet ADA requirements here.
Right.
You're
And
correct.
I'm not seeing how this will be flexible when the programming spaces that we planned had more space, because programs are not static. Often there's interaction, there's movement, there are different kinds of presentations. I'm not clear on how that will be possible. The current space, and you can tell me numbers about meeting space and training space, but I understand clearly that much of that is on the second floor, not here. I'm not seeing how increasing this from the current 80 to barely 90, 97 or 100 in any way addresses the kinds of programming requirements we have, the increased use of the library, the increased use that will occur in the library. I don't understand how this is supposed to work. And I don't think I'm understanding how putting a desk with a staff person in the teen space is going to help us avoid increasing staff, an expense we tried to minimize for the town, because the way the teen space had been presented before, part of the reason for that, the way it was set up, was to allow walls that we could see through. That avoided having to assign a full-time staff member, because it really doesn't take a professional librarian to tell you that teens alone in a room is not a good idea. This children's area, you know, you can talk about all these numbers, and you seem to forget that some of us have worked in spaces like these for decades. This does compromise functionality, and that's the bottom line.
Okay, thank you. So I welcome the feedback and the questions. I really do. So I appreciate what you're saying.
Thank you.
Ava, can you clarify a few things for me? What are you looking for in the community room? You said it doesn't meet your.
You're
other
looking at
than
a block of chairs. You're presenting a block of 100 seats with very little room around them. No aisle, no way to rearrange those seats and still have the same capacity, because the programs are not simply people sitting and listening to a lecture all the time. How do you have programs that have movement, that have presenters who are not simply standing at a lectern? Are we meeting the current regulations for these? Because in a lot of spaces, regulations require the seats to be attached. How would you evacuate this room quickly? There are a million questions here.
Well,
We tried to
let's break
address
that down,
those.
Ava, let's break that down, because this is a very important room to everybody.
I know, and that's why
First
I'm
of all, I will make a leap here and say that our architect is aware of all of those code requirements you just stated, and that the layout accommodates aisles and exiting in a satisfactory way, okay? I would doubt very much we're looking at anything other than a code compliant layout. Second, our architect has spent a lot of time and effort to bring us what we see now. I heard him say he's not done. If we want to see alternate arrangements in this room, I'm sure we can be shown them so that we can get comments on what you're looking for in terms of alternate arrangements. To dismiss it offhand at this point is not fair to any of us. It's not helpful. I think we want to know specifically, what other arrangements would you like to use? What do you do with the chairs? How do you lay out this room? What can be done that's going to meet the criteria? Basically it's an empty room. I don't see anything more flexible than that to start with. There's no built-ins or anything. So, arrangement of chairs can certainly be accommodated. So I'd like to hear more about that eventually and what can be done in that room. I have a question about the, is this a new feature that's being shown now in the revised plan as far as a staff member in the teen area? Or was that always in the program?
I thought that was always in, I was just trying to find that myself. I know a couple of changes have included it. I'll have to go back and look and see. But, maybe it's something that we have some more windows. So.
Right. Okay. And I'd also like to say, this is everybody's chance for good feedback like that. So again, I don't want to, dismiss these plans simply because we see a few minor things that are easily corrected. So, I'm trying to be patient here and, look at all these things and not be dismissive, but rather be solution oriented. The children's space we heard from Allison is too small. Ava, you alluded that it's not right, not functional, not, I'd like to hear more. I think all of us would like to hear more about why the first plan was okay and this second plan isn't.
Look at the open space available for activities in the children's room before and look at it now. This is full of furniture.
I kind of see the same.
Where's the open space for all of the different kinds of activities that are done in the children's room? Have you seen the children's room in Prosser? It has more open space than this. The size of the room may be bigger, but it's now filled up with other things.
But I don't see any more open space in the original plan that you're looking to go back to.
I think the problem here, Mark, is this. You have a staff of professional librarians giving you their best professional assessment. You have 3 people from the library board, including the director who's professional. You have 3 members of the library board telling you how this works. And we spent a year, a full year, giving you our best, most professional assessment of a space that we had already told you was limited. You heard us like parrots repeating that we were looking for adaptability and flexibility to try and make a space that we felt was marginal work. And we worked very hard to do that. And now what we see is a smaller space. These percentages that I'm seeing here, meeting and training spaces are 154% bigger. How much of that is upstairs? how much of that actually applies to the community room. The current community room holds 80. This is maybe 20 bigger after how many years? That room was designed in 1965. It holds 80. Now we're talking about a library that we want to last for 50 years, and it barely holds 100. You know, we're not saying this to be a pain. If maybe there had been more involvement in some ways of the director when some of these things occurred, we'd have had more time to assess it.
I got to stop you right there, Ava. I got to stop you right there because you started this whole statement with how you spent a lot of time, a lot of effort by professionals to develop this program. We put a lot of faith in this 28,000 square foot program. And we went to referendum on that program. And we're trying to meet exactly that program. Now, if you're telling us that that program has changed, that what we went to referendum on is no good, we need more space than we went to referendum, then we've got to confront that. Then we've got to throw out the program and go back. But, you know, we have met, this meets the program that you and all the professionals, the Board of Trustees, the library staff, the library director, which we respect immensely. You are the users of this building, but this is the program that you developed and told us, yes, you made cuts. Yes, you made sacrifices. I think that was admirable. We're all respectful of the time, the money that the taxpayers are going to spend on this. But that was what was put forward. That's what the architect has met. And suddenly now there are, oh, we weren't involved. My God, we developed this program. So I don't understand that at all. Plus, I think the missing piece here, and we haven't looked at it, I don't know that we're going to be looking at it tonight because there's no changes, is we have another library. We have another library. So, you know, as a building committee, we've been looking at the system in total. And so I don't want anybody to forget that. I want to move on. We have some other hands up. Deputy Mayor, I know you have another meeting to get to. I'll let you speak.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And obviously, I'm participating as the council liaison and a former member of this committee. And I think I have a comment about the process. I think we all know that we're making decisions for the future of the town. And for this project to be successful, we need the professional staff and the Board of Trustees to be comfortable and proud of process because they're the ones that have to live it. And for me, it's about messaging. If they're not happy, this project fails and we failed the community. And so I feel that TSKP is presenting a case almost like in court, trying to support reduction by 10%, but not showing any concern for the professional staff, the board, not validating, but really trying to prove a point. And I think this is a process that is going to require some compromise. And it's not adversaries. We have to find a way to work together to make the professional staff feel comfortable and not litigated, but let's kind of find a way to sit down, and maybe it's offline or in some committee meetings, but to sit down with TSKP and the staff and the board to find some ways to make this happen. But it just seems like I'm almost listening to litigation. TSKP is proving their case, but not really hearing and listening and validating the feelings from the staff. And I think if we cannot get the professional staff and the board on par, this project is going to be a failure. And none of us want that to be the case. And I really think we have to find a way to get everyone on the same page without feeling like there's one side versus the other, but what can we do together to make this work? And it's going to require some compromising on everyone's efforts inside. But I just feel right now it's really the staff that is going to sell this project, because those are the folks that our public is most comfortable with. They trust the staff, but if the staff is not proud of this project, then they won't come. And I really think that we have to find a way to sort of get on one accord here. And I'll just save my comments for later, but thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you. Very much appreciated. I'm in agreement with that. I'm sure our committee, we're going to hear from more people, are in agreement with that. That's part of this process. That's what we're doing right now. I hope I hope, we're talking out all this, all of these suggestions. And I reiterate, these are suggestions. Nobody should be looking at that as, oh my God, you put linoleum in the room. How could you do that? We're talking about all these things. So we need carpet in a room. Great. Let's make those changes. We're in the first of 3 design phases. So let's keep that in mind, that these suggestions that people are making all over the place want to be heard. Changes want to be made all the time to things. But we are seeking that compromise. I think there's no doubt about it. We need to compromise because as it stands right now, we don't have the money to build what we saw, a few weeks ago. Bob Berman, you got your hand up?
Mr. Chairman. I've been listening to what everybody is saying. Looking at the descriptions TSKP has given us of their thinking of how the furniture would be placed and all that, and doing the comparisons as well. And I gotta be blunt. If that many people are unhappy with what they've seen, and basically they're unhappy with the original 30,000 square feet, then very simply it says to me, let's just shelve the whole process for now until sometime in the future we can get enough money to do what everybody wants. I don't know when that date's going to be, but I guarantee it's not going to be this year or next year. That's a safe bet because additional referendum is not going to fly at this time. I can't tell you what the additional costs are going to be by doing that, but I'm willing to bet it's going to add a minimum of 20% just on today's space size. And if we're going to go up to say 35,000 square feet, we're going to almost double the price. We're going to go from 29 million to probably at least 40 million or more. So, you need to keep that in mind too. That's one of the alternatives. Is it a good one? I don't think it's a good one, but it's also one of the alternatives. Do I like the idea that we had to reduce down from the 30,000 that everybody was willing to live with back to the roughly 28,000? No, I'm not. But I don't know what the alternative is.
Yeah, see? Yeah, she looked like you.
That's my problem. That's my dilemma. And I'm sitting here trying to figure out what really are we going to do? If we kick the can down the road much further, we're going to be that much further down the way time-wise. And if I remember correctly, the existing bonding resolution expires sometime in 2024, I think. I think it's only good for 3 or 4 years. So that if we don't do this soon, we're basically back to square one. And that's going to be a problem. And I think that's exactly what the golf course faced when the first time it went through, it was approved and they discovered they didn't have anywhere near enough money. And by the time they could get around to doing another referendum, they had to start from square one. So I think we're looking at that as a possibility too. That doesn't sit well, but that's something, we have to keep in mind. And I don't see this council approving a referendum. I don't see how we're going to get additional money otherwise than a referendum to add to what we have. If we go for Granite McMahon, which I'm not sure is actually feasible, all that does is reduce what we bond from the existing 28.255 to 27.255. Doesn't help us, just creates more of a problem. So again, that's my comments on it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Bob. We're gonna have a presentation following this by Downs to talk schedule and dollars with options and so forth. And Elizabeth, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you to TSKP. This is an amazing layout. It's not an amazing layout for the town of our size and for what we need. It's too squished for one. And again, we came in at 35,000 square feet and we already went down to 28,000 square feet. That is borderline too small. And again, I want to focus in on the children's department. It is too small. It's too small. And as we were talking about, towns around us with 40,000 square foot libraries for main libraries with smaller populations, I'm curious, were they really wrong and just way too big of libraries? I'm wondering why we are thinking that Bloomfield deserves less than, because they do not, even not. And again, I want to go into the fact that we're supporting the entire town. We have a new strategic plan. We have more numbers than we had already expected at this point. We're showing last month alone 67,000 minutes of library use on our public terminals 67,000 minutes. I want everyone to think about how much computer use that is and how much more computer use there's going to be when more people in our town realize all of the resources we have to offer the public. And Mark keeps bringing up, what was that referendum? Referendum was conceptual. We now know all the size spaces and what that means. And while, yes, this looks beautiful on paper, it's not that much of an increase between what we already have and what this new proposed with the cuts would be. I don't think we're talking apples to apples here. And again, there's a lot of expertise that went into this. And, I'm wondering if we should go back to inviting, Leslie Berger in on a conversation about this. It was the consultant that we used for the space planning. And I mean, I'm just thinking about like the sight lines here with the shelves between the computer station and the adult seating area. The staff has been working very strategically to make sure that we wouldn't have to add that many more staff people on the floor at all times. That's going to translate into even more staff than we have been thinking about. And the current plans we're asking for 2 more full-time staff members to help with this, because we do know we'll need more people on the floor at all times. This is even more, but we haven't had the full ability to really think that all through. But again, I want to say that it's too small, and I'm worried too, because we're coming in this so late that the fact that we even asked TSKP to make a floor plan with cuts before having these conversations about which direction we should go. We should have had this conversation a few months ago, right when we knew the money was a problem. And again, the responsibility of delivering a library project that is going to serve the community for 4, 5, 6 decades, it's a big responsibility. And to come up short right now, and I feel like this 10% reduction in size is being minimized because it looks so similar. But I wish I had a quick number so people could visualize how much that square footage looks like. I'm not good with that, but I feel like that might help it more, but it's too squished. If you picture with just the computer stations in the adult section, a person at each one of those computers and staff helping them and people trying to walk around to get to the fireplace and seating area, it's really not an easily walkable space. And again, I want to bring up this concept of library anxiety. There's a lot of people who do not feel comfortable in libraries for whatever reason. And we are trying to break down all of those barriers. And I'm worried that having a library that's too small, too constrained, and you have all different types of people all on top of each other, it's not going to make for a nice experience. So if we have to reevaluate the timeline, if we need to go forward with McMahon Wittenberry first and wait until we get Prosser right, I think that's what we need to do. I think we really need to rethink timelines and not keep going to what if the project costs 60 million next year. Nobody knows what's going to happen. So making assumptions based without the experts to really talk about those types of assumptions, I'm worrying that's clouding what we're talking about here. And that's creating 21st century library experience for all Bloomfield residents to help them with public health, education, employment, all the things we're doing now, but with more people. We want to be the best library in the state. We want to serve every single resident. We're only serving a fraction of our residents right now. We're getting better at that. We have a strategic plan to get us there so that we are improving every resident's life, because we know the library can do that if we make the library a space for all. So again, I'm worried that even us debating this right now, we are already way down a road where I'm not sure how we even got here. Decisions have been made, and yes, I know we haven't made votes, but decisions have been made that we're even debating this right now. It's taking us off the main argument that what we should be talking about, and that is, are we building libraries that are going to stand the test of time and that are big enough the day we build them? Because as I said, in 1963, the day Prosser was done, it was not big enough, and we're doing the exact same thing again when we talk about cuts. And yes, we can make everything fit in there that was on the program, but is that going to be the experience we want? I can tell right when you walk in, you walk in right with stuff everywhere. You know, we need space, we need the flexibility to grow and adapt and roll with the changes. And we're barely doing it with over a year of work before the cuts were made. We were barely doing it. And now we're debating a 10% cut. And again, I don't think we're talking discussion. I don't know how we can have a robust conversation at this venture.
Well, we have to have a robust conversation. I'm interested in a robust conversation. I'm interested in knowing if we decided today that, okay, we're going to find a way to do the 30,000 square foot building. Is that going to meet the library's needs? Are you and the staff and the board of directors going to be happy with that?
Mark, we were prepared to make what we had work. Again, it was challenging. We still have not worked through the children's space because, you know, we're having issues getting that right because of the space constraints.
So,
but we're working on it. We're working through it. This is throwing a whole other loop into it and having to make quick decisions. This is, again, we were not prepared for cuts. We were barely making it as it was.
Nobody's prepared for cuts. I can assure you that. But I think we have to do our due diligence to at least understand what bringing this in on budget would take and make a decision from that. I think we owe that to ourselves as a committee. I think we owe it to the public. I think we owe it to the staff that, you know, we can't just walk away and say, well, what would it have taken to bring it in on budget? Because there's not always opportunities, as Bob said, to start over again. Maybe that's what needs to happen, but that's what we're all getting into tonight. Lois.
Thank you very much. I just want to say at the outset that I think this committee is really dedicated to delivering a 21st century library. And I think it's been hard that we haven't been able to work in person on this. That would have helped. But I think we all are aiming for the same thing. And after listening to the meeting last week, I was very concerned too, because the last thing we need to do is spend $29 million on a library system that doesn't deliver what we need. So I went back, I was part of that programming and space planning subcommittee. And I know that we took off and that Elizabeth's staff was primarily responsible for developing the grant information to get the $1 million grant. So I went back and I looked at all the guidance. I looked at the worksheets. It's pages and pages and pages of detailed planning materials so that you come up with square footage. They give square footage for various elements of the library, you know, how much for staff, how much for kids, how much for teams, how much for storage. And then they give a number of 1.35 square feet based on population for communities like ours that are between 20 and 50,000 square feet. And we did that. And the committee worked with that, and we had the help of the Berger Group. They gave us $5,000 to help us with the survey of the community. I mean, we paid them, and we paid them $7,000 to do the space planning. And we came up with numbers to use to go to referendum. And based on, if you assume our population is 22,000, which it isn't, and the state says it's going to be 21,000 sometime before 2040, I think that's an underestimate. But if you use 22,000, it says we need a minimum square footage between the two libraries, because when they do these things, they count all the library space, of 36,640 between the two, which is about 25% above the state recommended minimum. They don't expect you to, they don't encourage you to have only minimum space. They want you to have above that level. And ours comes out using their formula at about 23% higher. And then I did the calculation for the sizes of the two libraries. Prosser's going to be 36% larger than it is now. It'll be more functional and it'll have the modern design. McMahon is going to be 54% larger than it is now. It'll be functional and it'll be beautiful, I think. So we presented this plan. We used the state approach, the process, and I guess I'm wondering why, what is it that invalidates that process now? I want to understand it because I don't want to spend money on something that isn't going to work, but I don't understand why the state leads us through this process and gets us to the wrong answer, if that's what it does.
Elizabeth, is that something you can address?
Yes. So Lois, yes, that was all part of the beginning process, and building up to referendum was all that work. And then post-referendum was making sense of all of that work. And part of that was working with TSKP, where they came up with this design, and then making sense of all the spaces from there. And it's interesting that you bring this up because one of the things that was brought up today as we were talking about this on staff was, you know how we have the big opening between the first and second floor? Maybe that opening should be actual floor space, because that would give us more space to make sense of all the programming requirements we need. And another thing that came up, yes, we have two libraries, two physical libraries. But both of those libraries, the McMahon-Wittenberry, McMahon-Wittenberry Library needs to have all of the things that Prosser Library has, but Prosser has a lot of staff space because staff needs a space too. So thinking through all of this and thinking through the way we have forced Prosser to function for us. And again, we only just started our new strategic plan. A lot of these things in terms of bringing people back through the doors, we've been working through COVID, and we're still seeing an uptick. So when you're asking for my professional opinion about what's going on here, I'm thinking about when we are more successful, when we do have new libraries, you know, I strongly believe that in the whole, if you build it, they will come. And I think that, you know, we are trying to build buildings that are going to stand the test of time in Bloomfield and roll with all the punches that is going to come with changes in library service, of which there's been many. I feel like the public continues to expect more too of what the libraries can do from them. So I predict that we are going to have even more responsive services down the line. But you know, you need space to do all of that. You need space for collections, library of things. I'm not even sure where we're going to fit the library of things in. Again, there's a lot of things that we were kind of still working through. And all of these spaces, again, there's, you know, the flow and how they work out, and the community room, and are we able to store tables and chairs so that when Heidi has her line dancing program, that room is empty to fit all the people that come in from line dancing, but then we have story time in the morning, and then we have a program where people are sitting down. All of these things we've been thinking through, we've been working with TSKP for over a year. And again, I want to applaud them. This is a great layout, but this is not the layout that we need to be flexible and adaptable moving into the future. And that square footage question, I know Nancy said that we could only make Chris a panelist if we needed him to speak. And Nancy, I would like to request again that Chris be made a panelist because he can speak more fully on this exact topic. Nancy?
I defer to the chair.
Oh, yes, please promote Chris.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I don't see myself. I'm not used to speaking on these, so I'm hoping I'm at least heard.
You are, Chris.
All right. So I just wanted to actually directly, because I worked a lot on the state element for the construction grant, so I can speak more directly to what Lois said. And then it ties in a little bit with a lot of what's being talked about here. For one, that's the state's, I'm not saying it's not helpful, but I do think some of those were the hoops the state makes you jump through to get that grant. And I don't know how seriously all that was taken. I know Leslie Berger actually helped us a lot with that part of it in terms of getting the numbers to fit. But I definitely agree with your calculations. But the one thing Elizabeth touched on that I've been thinking about a lot when we combine the square footage of the two buildings, we've been living and breathing, all of us here have been living and breathing this for a long time. You wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it, which I do a lot. And I think it's part of what the challenge is here with us having two libraries, because we didn't design McMahon as sort of an extension of Prosser, where some spaces are in one building and some are in the other, so that you're getting a total 36,000 square foot building that does it all, like in concept. We designed McMahon to be a single full service library in miniature. So it is serving that part of the part of the community in full as a library. It is not just we have a teen space in one area and a children's in one library, right? So I think that's part of the problem. McMahon has to be self-sufficient to be a community library, the best community library it can be, and serve full service. So then that leaves Prosser as the bigger library that is also, and I keep using this analogy, it is both a storefront and a corporate headquarters, right? That's where we're doing all the planning and the technology rollouts. We're doing staff training. We're doing a lot of the technical stuff. We're doing community outreach. All that's happening behind the scenes in the larger building. Plus, we're serving a bigger public there. So I think that's part of why this is so challenging, having worked on this for months and months and months, along with Elizabeth, Allison, and TSKP and the building committee. It's been hard. And I think that's what we're trying to get across is, yes, as Marcus said, we actually ended up with a couple thousand square feet more in that first phase of design. And that felt tight, but we felt like we were getting there, and we felt like we were getting close to making that work. And I think the desperation you may be hearing from us is that feeling we were close, but not quite there during that phase with that amount of square feet, and then having the 10% cut just felt like the bottom dropped out based on what we were seeing, planning the workflow, imagining services in the buildings. It's exciting. I mean, I've worked here now for over a decade in poor facilities. I cannot wait for new buildings. But it also is a lot of responsibility where you feel like, can this space deliver comfortable, welcoming service to the range we want? And can we adapt? Because libraries change constantly now. And that is our concern. We need this main library, the bigger one, to be as adaptable as possible. And I think that's part of our concern. So I kind of wanted to just weigh in with that. I think that the combining of the square footage in the libraries to sort of equal a Simsbury or an Avon doesn't quite work, because it's not how that community library at McMahon is designed. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. And just, for the record, Chris and Allison have been so vital to this whole process. Thank you, for all your time and effort. Bob, you have your hand up, but would you be okay if I don't want to leave this topic. I want to incorporate it into the following topic that Downs is going to be presenting, to set
That's
some
fine, I'll
options in
wait.
motion. You okay if we
I'll
move
wait.
on?
Yep,
Thank you.
I'm fine with
All right,
that.
so like I said, we're not through discussing this aspect, but I want all the information in front of us as we move forward. So I'm going to turn it to our construction manager for their project update.
Thank you, Mark. We had gone through the square footage quite extensively, and rightly so. And we have the VE list on hand to essentially talk through some more if people feel that they need to do that beyond the the proposed square footage. And I guess we would open that back up, Mark.
Yeah, we've all had a chance. It was presented in detail at our last meeting. And I have not received any feedback on this. I've got some generalizations that, VE is nothing more than cuts, but I think there's a lot of different things going on here. So all of these suggestions, we're looking for feedback, on these things, because tremendous amount of effort went into making suggestions and trying to get it to a workable point. You can see it's not easy to try and shave millions of dollars off a project. There's no magic bullet here. So, just as we got some specific feedback on some spaces being too small or this not being functional, thank you. I'm really interested in, what items on here should not be on here, anything that wasn't considered that should be on here to help us get to budget, or are we, the other option here, we're going to get into schedules and other options, but are we going to throw our hands up and say the program's no good and we got to start all over again to get what we want? If we don't want to spend time working this list, then the other option is going back to programming and starting there again and fulfilling everybody's needs that way. But do we have some feedback on this list? Questions about what items are what is this? What does that mean? I can tell you that I did listen to the Library Board of Trustees meeting today. I wasn't able to attend. I was hoping I could attend last night. I had a business meeting. But I heard some misunderstandings about some of these items, and I hope there are questions here about what they are and what they do to or not do to functionality, to programming, to aesthetics. Again, I still believe these items don't touch any of that until you get to the square footage cut. But please, I really want to open up the floor to questions, comments. Where do we stand with this VE list? Elizabeth?
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, there was about this list. I'm wondering, because I know the example that you gave for council was that we found out we didn't need to dig as deep. And so that was like an automatic saving thing. I'm wondering if we could break this list up into those things, like all the common sense stuff that just makes sense that we did that. And then as compared to the things that really are value engineering that are changing. Changes to what was the original intent. And I'm asking that because it is hard to talk about these 56 items if you're not somebody in the know about these types of things. So if we could make that differentiation and then also have it ranked in a way of like the easiest things to change versus the hardest things to change. And I know one of the questions I had was, the acoustical experience, like what's going to affect the acoustical experience in the library? What's not? What's something that is just a change? Why did Tai-Su Kim Partners pick certain things to begin with? What is the trade-off for some of these changes? Because it's hard to talk about them without knowing what the trade-offs are. And as another example, like even the substitute storefront for curtain wall at Prosser, like what does that mean? What is that? Is that changing the difference of the thickness of the glass? Is it, we're going to hear more from the outside? Is it just aesthetics? Like what, each one of these things, it's hard to take it in mass, I guess is my comment about.
Well, I was hoping, we weren't taking it in mass. I was hoping you had taken the time to go through this item by item and develop questions item by item for us. I was very disappointed this was not on the Library Board of Trustees, meeting. To simply say we're not going to live with any of these VE items is far from what you're saying now. And I appreciate your questions. They're wonderful questions. I was hoping we'd be further along tonight than that. And if you have specific questions, let's address them right now on some of those items. Because it sounds like you don't have a lot of them because you're not, familiar with a lot of these things. But I'd like to put some of this to bed. Curtain wall versus storefront quickly is describing the aluminum framing. Has nothing to do with the glass in there. Has nothing to do with acoustics. I would defer to our architect to if there's anything further we need to be talking about with that, what kind of, if it has any impact on design. I don't believe it does, but Richard and Tai-Su, is there any, anything further we need to be concerned about switching from curtain wall to storefront framing?
No, we would recommend this, accepting this recommendation. So we had initially called for storefront, which has a greater capacity to span a height. It's very often used in tall buildings, but the fact is that we have very limited height in this building, and so we can use what's called the storefront, which is a slightly different profile configuration of the aluminum members that comprise of that consist of the window structure, the window vertical frame and the horizontal frame. It's going to look very similar. There's no change in glass. So it's just a clarification. When we met with Downs to go through their estimate, we said you can certainly use storefront instead of curtain.
And Richard, if I may, just to kind of take a step back and to kind of give an overview of the process that we take as a construction manager. We're looking at the overall project, and our task is to measure and to quantify the documents, the schematic design, to make sure that we're working within a budget, we're working within a schedule, and we're trying to predict the costs that, unfortunately, in this market are very difficult to predict. We're all feeling it. We're feeling it at the pump. We're feeling it at the grocery store, and we're dealing with it in monumental terms in the construction industry as a whole. So that aside is one particular thing that we're dealing with. But this process that you're kind of seeing in front of you is something that we go through on every single project. Value management, constructability list, where our job is to offer our experience, what we see on projects from practicalities and historic information to offer the best product for the town, for our client, in concert with the architect. So some of these items, quite frankly, most of these items probably would have landed on a list regardless of where we were with the overall total budget, because we want to make sure that we're transparent and we're offering enough options and we're giving the committee and everybody the information that they need to make an educated decision. So we want to make sure that the job is constructible, that we're able to predict these costs, and that we develop an overall project approach that provides the quality of project that you want. So the storefront, and just to take that one as an example, because it's number one, that's something that's like on our radar on, you know, any particular given project, just like, you know, some of these other items. So I just wanted to kind of take a step back and make sure that everybody kind of understands the process. This is a process. It's meant to be interactive, so that we can make sure that we're developing the right set of documents, and they're coordinated properly.
And to expand upon that, Mark, from what Tom is saying, I think value engineering, you know, that mantra gets taken as, oh, it's just cuts and they're trying to cut away stuff from the libraries or any building for that matter, when, you know, it's called value engineering because it's also, as Tom mentioned, whether you know you're over budget or not, it's still looked at from our end, because we try to also look at, as we get schematic and design development documents from an architect and engineer, we're trying to figure out ways that your dollars, your hard-earned tax dollars, can be used in a more cost-effective manner so that your dollars can be put where they're really needed. You know, you look at something like substituting a curtain wall or a storefront, it's a different framing system, but you're still getting the same thickness of glass and windows. You know, when you're looking at reclaiming the existing parking lot, I'm sorry, I highlighted too much, to modify islands for 46 parking spaces, you know, that's a more cost-effective way to build your parking lot where you can save some money. And, you know, unfortunately we are over budget, but if we weren't, that monies could be used elsewhere. Deleting the VRF in favor of a VAV system, that was actually a request from the town, DPW, Department of Public Works, because it's an easier system, more cost-effective system for them to maintain. So, you know, and Elizabeth, I think you make a very good point about kind of breaking this list up to, you know, essentially what might be something that has to come down because, well, all these things have to come down unfortunately, because of the budget, but also what are these cost-effective items compared to, you know, some items that may have to happen in order for the budget to work, but what are the cost-effective items? And there's many here. And I think understanding that and talking about it now and going through it further with the library is a good idea so that everyone can understand what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, Elizabeth, I'm going to get to everybody with their hands up. But Elizabeth, are there any other items on this list that you and the Board of Trustees sort of red flagged as why are we doing this, that we could just hit quickly? I know there was, I heard a comment at last night's meeting that, you know, why are we looking at reducing square footage when we could be reducing the height of the building? And that question was, it's not an either or. Both were considered. So I think that's important to understand. Items 14 and 15 were reducing the height. And so that was considered as a separate question, and it was recommended, you know, without sacrificing aesthetics. We had a lot of headroom everywhere, you know, nice spaces, and we still do. But you know, it's not in place of cutting floor square footage. So, you know, I did hear that comment last night. I'm trying to remember if there's anything else brought up at your meeting last night to talking about this list.
Well, another thing was specifically about acoustical concerns.
Yes.
I know that when we met with the University of Hartford students and professor, there were some things that were some recommendations from their team were quickly dismissed about, and I know it was partially because of budgetary concerns. So I do have more questions about acoustical things that will be affected and impacted.
Well, let's stop right there and address that. So the items that I know about on here that affect acoustics, at the very bottom of this page, item 41 the first page, you were there, was using a different material to achieve the same level of acoustics. So it did not affect the acoustic value for some wall panels using, rather than expensive wood, using a different material on panels to do that. The other one was at McMahon, eliminating the hard ceilings in the new main room and substituting it with acoustic tile ceiling, which would improve the acoustics in that room. And the last one that I remember in here had acoustic impact was removing the hanging clouds. There were panels hanging from the ceiling in the children's area, and then putting in an acoustic tile ceiling instead, which, and we had included putting those clouds back in as an alternate if we eventually have the money to do it. But I think they're more of a, that's more of an aesthetic to the room than an acoustical concern. And I would again defer to our architects on that if that needed any other clarification. I don't know that there are any other acoustical items on the list. Anybody, Downs or TSKP, remember any others that?
No, I think that was kind of the gist of it.
Yeah, no, that was it, Mark.
Yeah.
Because yes, acoustics is very important. We don't want to compromise that. What else, Elizabeth, did you have red flagged here?
Well, still the biggest thing is the mood and the experience roster. And that, you know, what Tai-Soo Kim Partners came up with, I'm still concerned about that flow walking through spaces on top of each other, the acoustical experience of somebody coming into the library. And it is interesting because somehow that second floor the space does seem to play out very well, but those first floor spaces and the transitions between spaces and the sight lines, I'm hoping actually, I'm curious from TSKP if they could talk about the mood and the experience of all of this combined with that 10% space reduction.
Sure, let me talk about that a little bit. So we have certain finishes that we illustrated. You saw the interior renderings that we had done for both Prosser and for McMahon. So we talked about reducing the amount of wood wall paneling. I don't know, Scott, if you could identify that. That would be an alternate. I think we talked about that being an alternate, but
yes.
So that was something that we identified as a potential cost savings item, but if the bidding climate is better than predicted, then that can certainly be added back in. But we have no intention of compromising on the mood or the flow of the spaces. I think what we had shown in the renderings is still the intention of the design. So we were very careful not to take stuff out that would make it an ugly building or make it not a wonderful building experience.
So are you not concerned about the spaces all being on top of each other and you know, like, so what if we had to cut another 10%? Are we just going to, like, is there a point where you would say that the spaces are too close together? Like, do you think that flow is good enough to walk around the adult computers into that back area? Or if you have a family in the children's area and kids are screaming, are you going to hear that? If you're at the service desk, that's right there. I guess those are a lot more of the questions related again to acoustics and the experience and the mood. And I realize that we do have very tight, you know, budget issues here, but I feel like it's getting lost in, I'm concerned about the overall focus of the direction of this conversation. And again, I ask because I am thinking about the Park Street location of Hartford Public Library's new location. There's a lot of room in between spaces. You don't feel like there's stacks and furniture everywhere. There's a lot of open space. And when we started this process, we talked about the concept of open space in libraries. There's not a lot of open space in this library now. There wasn't before, and there definitely is not now. And again, I want to go back to that, the children's space again.
Yeah, I share the same concerns. We don't want to have things on top of each other. And when we were doing these sketches that we presented tonight, Jeanette was actually questioning a lot of the spaces in between. And this is not a final design. This is a strategy that we need to work through together. No, we're not going to place things so close together that people can't walk through. One of the things that Jeanette pointed out is that we need some space where we have access to computers. And then certainly we'll continue to look at that in closer detail. So tonight, we showed you a sketch of how we can arrange the spaces, but all of that still is subject to change. And it all has to be hard-lined and carefully dimensioned. The sketch that you saw was hand-drawn, and it's a tight hand drawing, but there's a lot of wiggle room in that kind of a diagram. But we had to present something to give you some sense of what the size of these spaces are.
Well, let me comment something here. I know Elizabeth and library board, it's becoming, seems to me, more emotional issues. 10% reduction in everywhere. It sounds big, but between the chair space and book stack and so on, I really think in actual experience, it's not going to be big difference because we're not cutting out one area, big area, and reducing certain area substantially. It is, we are reducing, everywhere little tighter. Yeah, it will be tighter, but I assure you, I don't think it will be what you're describing, top of each other, or it's too close to furniture and move around, hard to move around. And we are experienced architect and good architect, and we do not suggest something we don't feel comfortable. We really don't. I mean, we live, stand by what we design, and I think it will be a very good building. Whether it's big enough for you for future, that I am not the one to say about that, but based on your program, current use, and so on, I think it will be a good building, and you feel comfortable with it. And I mean, I, as an architect, I not only work for client, but also I work for building. So I have to make sure building I design is I can be proud of. The people use that building become very comfortable and proud of, and that's we always strive for. So that's my feeling of current situation. But if it's become a kind of a emotional issue, I cannot comment on that because it's become almost going to that direction. And I mean, let me just depart from that particular subject. This number, yes, this is number down together so carefree and so on. So, but still, as Don said, this is estimate, guesstimate, and the best guesstimate at this point. But still, it is not some scientific, exact number. It can come in low, it can come in high. We don't know yet until we really try. And I think if you really feel reducing 10% now not comfortable, and then I think you should find a way somehow $1.4 million, right? This 1.4 million. I mean, I have one suggestion. You have furniture budget $1.2 million. And maybe bridge is another $300,000. Combined together exceed $1.4 million. Can we put that as an alternate? And so that we can move forward and without, I sense this become an emotional issue, not hurting the users and library staff. And the worst come to us, when we bid it, actually September, October, maybe October, we really confront at that time, what we do now. So, but right now to move forward, you gotta find $1.45 million. So I thought about this. That's one way to do those things as an alternate and move forward. If committee here really cannot come to a grips with reducing the building as an alternate, and then maybe that's another way. But I really don't think it's a good idea postponing the whole project, another time, because I said again, this number is already guesstimate.
So Tai-Su, you recommend add alternates for the bridge and what else?
Furniture.
Oh, furniture.
Furniture,
Okay.
what I'm not saying furniture is taking out. I mean, if we cannot agree with a reduction of the building, and that's another way to move forward, because we gotta find $1.5 million, right?
Right.
Furniture and IT. right?
Yeah, furniture IT, and so who knows, come in lower, we're fine. Just remember, we have almost $6 million of contingency, all kinds of, including owner's contingency, $6 million. See? So
Yep. We're gonna get into all those numbers.
we have to. So.
All right. Thank you for that suggestion. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, so I think somehow, because of $1.4 million based on this estimate, which I say it is estimate, we're going into this very difficult issue of reducing the building. If there is no consensus among the building, I think you gotta find a different way to solve this issue.
Right. I agree. Ava and then Lois.
Yeah, just to be clear, I spoke with a number of the board members since last night's meeting to explain some of this. As you may recall, I asked those acoustical questions last time. I, of course, still have concerns because one library is next to a fire department, the other one is not far. But those were not the main thrust of the board's discussion. The overwhelming issue that board members have was with the reduction of space. So I just would like to make that clear. And later when we talk about those figures, I will be more interested in what it is that Tai-Su Kim just told us, because I think we're not all hearing the same message on these numbers. Thanks.
Lois?
I was pleased to hear Tai-Su Kim mention the bridge. I think that would make great sense to put that on as an add alternate. I think it's going to add tremendous interest to the building. But if that $500,000 or $426,000 makes the difference between going ahead and not going ahead, I think we should put it in as an add alternate. And I also wondered how you made the list, because I didn't see the bridge on the list of possibilities for change. And yet it was on the original budget. And Mark, I mentioned to you the sunscreen, which on the list said $775,000. And I thought, great, we're done. Add that to the bridge and we've got $1.2 million and we can go home. But I wonder if there are other things that were on the original budget, big ticket things especially, that didn't get considered.
Well, I can tell you that the original budget, you can throw it away because it's totally replaced by the new budget. I mean, the new budget is far more detailed and it's responding to the schematic design. Whereas the original budget was responding to a conceptual design. So, you know, the fact that the front, the screen, the sunshade on the east side of the building was showing a very high value did not prove to be that. I think it, and thank you for bringing that up, because if we could eliminate that and find $700,000, that'd be great. But it's worth about $100,000.
That's what you told me.
Yeah, and so I'll take full responsibility for the bridge not being on this list so far. Okay, maybe I'm taking it personal. I just saw it as an integral part of the design that we didn't want to give up, and 400,000 didn't get us there. Okay, I mean, I realize you need to build and build and build pieces and parts in order to get there, but you know, I didn't think it was worth losing an integral part of the design like that. But that's a decision we can make together. You know, with the hopes, as Tai Su is presenting, that bids come in low and we can afford to do it. We have to be willing, though. I mean, if we're willing to go that route and say, we'll bid right now, we'll say it's an alternate, we'll say the furnishings are an alternate, we'll say that the loose technology pieces are an alternate, and we move forward. I mean, we're making a great leap that we'll have that money at some point or not. And you know, and if we don't get the money through the bidding process, through a low bidding process, then everybody has to be willing to live without those things. We'll live with existing furniture and it'll get replaced over time through operating budget, perhaps. Same thing with a bridge or not. You know, I don't know that there would ever be a random $400,000 in an operating budget to build a bridge. I saw it as something you don't put it in now, you'll never put it in. I could be wrong. I could be wrong about that.
I just don't want to
think they're
stop the
intriguing.
project.
They're intriguing. You know, I would be really curious to hear from, and we're going to go through this next. You know, if the library, if Elizabeth, staff, Board of Trustees are willing to go forward with the larger plan as presented, and know that you might live with all old furniture, you might live without a bridge, you might have to go begging for more technology in the end. That's their decision, okay, at this point. You know, I don't know if that's acceptable or not, and I think they deserve that option to look at that. If there are no more anything else on the VE list to talk about, then Scott, what do you have that add alternate list for now that we were considering?
Yeah, the add alternates list is next.
Can you guys see that?
Yeah, we can't see all the way to the
Oh.
right side of it. There you go.
Yep. So you have number one, which is the photovoltaic system purchase agreement. So instead of leasing it, actually buying it for the $445,000. The number two, fire protection system at McMahon for $60,000, which fire marshal concerned you don't need it to build the building, but you know, the option is there. Item three, increasing the Riley parking lot by 50% and the required drainage for $294,000. So that was a value engineering item to reduce the parking lot to save some money. And then item four, cloud ceilings, to bring the cloud ceilings back versus just a straight up acoustical ceiling in the room in favor of the conventional for the $27,000.
So these were things that are suggested as, and again, this can change as we go through future iterations of the estimate, that they would be sort of the first things, not in this particular order, to be brought back in if we have the money. And just to be clear, I want to make it clear to everybody, we've said it again, we'll still get the question. The solar panels are in the project. This item number 1 is simply the mechanism, whether we're doing it through a lease or we put out the cash to own the system. So this is not whether we have solar panels or not. We will have solar panels. Again, it's just how we go about getting them. The fire protection system is sprinklers. You know, it's a sprinkler system. There will be a fire alarm system in the building by code. Sprinklers are not required based on the size and configuration of the building. And I think the others speak for themselves. So, you know, these are kind of a moving target as we go forward, but we thought perhaps these are the first items that we'd want to put back in if we have the money to do them. So I don't know if anybody has any comments on those now. Bob, you got your hand up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I thought the bridge was going to be on here as well, and a few other things that I don't see here that I thought were going to be on here. Let me see, the bridge, the balcony above Mountain Avenue side, front balcony. I mean, those are a couple items I don't see on here that I thought were going to be here. Apparently, the proposed alternative stuff that's going out for bid has been narrowed down dramatically. Some stuff, put back in?
Well, they weren't, those couple items were not on this list. We can put them on this list. If let's look at our budget situation and we'll talk about these. These are very much tied to the VE list and the overall budget. So I think we have to look at that comprehensively. But yes, we can put those back on. I mean, not back. We can put them in as alternates.
Yeah, Bob, right now, those are in the overall base budget. The balcony, the bridge, and the alternate process is a very effective way to manage the cost of the job on bid day when we receive the bids from the trades. So, you know, the input that we're hearing tonight is great. You know, we made a list, we made some recommendations of what we felt was, you know, a starting point and a jumping off point. So it sounds like this alternates list may be an effective way to help manage the budget on bid day.
All right, thank you.
Any other hands up? No. Okay. All right. Scott, you want to move on to some?
Yeah, right there, Scott. I can take it. Yep, I can take it from there. So in this particular climate, the best way to control the escalation and the cost process is to get the job out to bid as soon as possible and to garner as much competition as we could possibly get in the form of contractors, trade bid packages, and getting everybody to the table and excited about your project, which we're excited to do. So getting the job out to bid is the most important thing to control the cost. But given the different options, I think it's important that we understand the time frame, and now more than ever, the time is money slogan is real. So we broke down the schedule into some milestone dates, and we tied that to the effect of the budget and the cost as it relates to that schedule. So I'll go through the options and then we can discuss. Option number 1 would be the total, the square footage of 36,640 square feet, which is the realigned square footage. And looking at the schedule today to receive direction from the committee on June 15th, there is about a month of incorporating the value engineering into the design. So essentially, that direction would be to accept, approve, move forward with the recommended value management. In addition, we can certainly make adjustments and modifications. To a certain extent, that list is kind of a live document, so we welcome that input as it relates to alternates and, resolving that. So there is about a month for TSKP to incorporate that. And then they will go back into the design development phase, which, based on a decision and direction today, would complete the design development phase September 14th. And now we're keeping with the same durations and timeframes that we originally set forth when we commenced this project. And then after the design development phase, there is another estimate process within that timeframe. And then the construction documents would commence. And right now, those would be due November 26th of this year. And then from that, those documents that we receive, there's actually another touch point that we would do another estimate. So we are responsible to provide 3 different estimates, at which point, when we go out to bid, we will organize that estimate so we can compare the bids as we receive them to a trade package budget that will be completely reconciled with your overall budget. If we go out to bid on November 26th, to turn that process around and look to mobilize at the beginning of January in 23, that's basically when we would be starting the project. That compared to the original schedule of September 19th, 2022. So right now, without accepting any value management, the current schematic design plan, as estimated, is about $5.5 million over budget. With the accepted value management, value engineering recommendations, given that there has been some time that has passed since the estimate was completed and the value management list and the few meetings that we have gone through, we're trying to predict as best we can what that means. We had a $360,000 overage at that point, with some percentage of escalation as every day and month tick by. We're estimating around $392,000 would be the overage if given the go-ahead for TSKP to restart the process and to essentially mobilize for construction at the beginning of January 2023 with the acceptance of the value management, value engineering suggestions and recommendations. Option number 2 would be to seek additional funding for the 39,445 square foot total system building between Prosser and McMahon. And given the same time frame of a direction tonight from the committee, we're anticipating that additional funding would be secured on or about election day of this year, which is November 8th this year. And then kind of sticking with that same time frame, those same durations, there is a time period where that design development process would need to be restarted. There's probably a month or so to get the reacclimated with the drawings, get into that design development process, which would complete on February 2nd of next year. The completion of construction documents for bidding purposes in April 16, for an overall mobilization and anticipated start of construction May 28th of 2023. That process still achieves you with the 2 additional estimates. So overall, we would be providing 3 complete detailed construction estimates as it relates to your overall project. And that would, with that time frame and looking at that overall schedule, the project right now would be about $6.6 million over budget without accepting any of the value management suggestions that are on the recommended log. The alternates as they currently stand, which obviously can be changed and adjusted. And if the if the value engineering, value management ideas were accepted, less the square footage realignment item, $2.7 million would be required as additional funding to achieve the 39,445 square foot total library system between the two buildings of Prosser and McMahon. The last option is really a kind of an option 1A, and that is relative to the McMahon grant because of the time frame with the McMahon grant. And that duration would need to be adjusted. That schedule would need to be adjusted because that grant would potentially not be approved until next year. And we used the same time frame that we were under for Prosser, just as a baseline and a measuring stick to achieve some dates as a target so that we can analyze the schedule and the cost. So if the direction was to proceed with the 36,440 square foot system building, the same schedule as option 1 prevails, but what it does is it offsets the construction of Prosser and McMahon by about 8 months from starting in what's that? Actually, from originally starting in September 19 of 2022 to then, essentially aligning with option 2 in May of 2023. So Prosser would actually start sooner. They actually align a little bit closer given the option 1 schedule, but we would not be able to bid the 2 projects at the same time, which actually garners a little bit more buying power with the trade subcontractors, and there is an economy of scale because we would bid both projects at the same time. There would be an option for the contractors to be awarded both projects at a reduced cost to the town. They would have that option as part of our bid process. We have found that has proven to be a cost savings on a number of projects that we have done that in the same campus and within the same town concurrently. So we do think that is a strategy for cost savings. How much that is, we applied what we think is historically a percentage on that. And then the McMahon project actually extends a little bit farther than Prosser. So that would increase the cost as well as it aligns with option number 1. So very similarly, there's escalation that is affected by not bidding McMahon at the same time, because that would kind of sit and wait because we can't go out to bid until the library grant contract is signed and approved. So given that that schedule and that the critical nature of that, we wouldn't want to engage any bid process until that was established and signed. So with the escalation and the additional cost, if there was no value engineering accepted, it would the McMahon the project would be over budget by $6 million. Total project would be over budget by $6,236,000 with the value engineering selected, in similar to option 1, where it would be the realignment of the overall square footage. The project would be over by about $1.1 million, just shy of $1.1 million. In addition to every one of these options, the swing space and the move of the libraries, from our perspective, would need to be complete at least 1 week prior to our mobilization. essentially 1 week before we're boots on the ground, we would be asking the town for the buildings to be vacated and ready for construction, ready for demolition, selective demolition, abatement, and things like that. So I guess with that, Mark, we can open it up for questions.
Yeah, I would like, Nancy, can you talk to the date shown on additional funding secured in option 2? It's a November date. Can you talk to that?
That would be if the town would do a referendum, go back out to referendum for additional funding. That's really what I believe that is designed to address.
And do we know anything about other funding sources that? Well, my understanding is we would need to go back to referendum no matter what the funding source. Is that true?
I believe that's consistent with the legal opinion that was sent out to you earlier this afternoon.
All right. So.
And I see that the town manager has his hand up, and maybe
great.
he has questions and he can talk about that more.
Yes, Stanley.
I hate to
please.
put him on the spot, but he has questions anyways, I think so.
Good. Please, Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've actually got a lot to say, and I'll try and be concise in saying it. Once again, I've been educated and enjoyed the discussion so far, even though tough decisions lie ahead. And I don't want to enter into the deliberative discussions that the building committee will hold and ultimately take action on this evening, but I do want to provide some context. And I guess let me start with the funding question that the chair raised. Based on what we know at this point, having received clarifications of questions that we raised for any of the number of scenarios from bond counsel, any additional funding considerations, I don't care how small or how large, whether they're from external sources or internal sources, my understanding is that it will trigger the need to go back to the town's neighbors. And ultimately, that's what we need to bear in mind. And the bond indentures, which haven't really been a part of the discussion this evening, and I really, to be honest with you, don't know how much it should be a part. But the bond indentures, in effect, what it is, there is an agreement that has been made with the voters, the neighbors of Bloomfield, and it's pretty restrictive when it comes to change in cost, change in scope, change in what the neighbors expect based on what they've been told and what has been written. It's not just a question, it's everything that lies within. That was ultimately approved by the town council. So I really want to applaud the effort of the building committee and even whatever action that you take this evening. I don't think you can make a wrong decision from the perspective of what you have been tasked with. And for most construction projects, what you're dealing with, and to be successful in a construction project, is to deliver a project that is on time and on budget. Those are just objective criteria that apply to most any construction project, even under difficult circumstances. And you've had difficult circumstances. But I think it's important to remember that you don't bear the full responsibility of this issue. That lies with the town council. And if everything had gone according to plan and there hadn't been extra costs due to inflation and everything else, the supply chain issues, even today, we know that the feds have increased by 0.75 interest rates on top of a recent increase. We didn't anticipate that last November. And so there are many reasons why this issue is bigger than the building committee. You're doing your job, trying to keep this under budget, or at least on budget and on time. But one of the reasons why ultimately this will have to receive due consideration by the town council is because circumstances have changed. We know from interest rates going up, and when you go out to bond, that's going to affect the impact on our neighbors. If interest rates are going up, chances are, as good as our finances may be, that the numbers are probably going to be different, potentially a higher burden. There are also considerations such as funding opportunities that have come open that could reduce that burden on our neighbors. And so do we shut the door on that because of a timing issue? Building committee's answer may be yes. One of your main tasks is to keep this on time. The town council's determination will have to be broader. And that's an important consideration because I know the town council, they want to deliver this on budget and on time as well. But you've got these other considerations, I've named a couple. The tax burden increasing by increasing the interest rates, funding opportunities that we didn't know about, that we may have a very good chance of getting from taxes that our neighbors also pay to the state. There was a point in the discussion, this was an important discussion, a point that I want to, I guess I can't correct what someone had said, but one of the, and I don't know the names because I've not been involved, but I think a pretty key player, and I don't say this to criticize, but I think the comment was, I think this discussion has become emotional. Now, I hadn't said anything. So emotion didn't come from me, but it hasn't become emotional. Unless passion and caring is what was meant. And in that case, I think that's good. So it shouldn't be a negative, comments that have been made. Now, I had an opportunity, and this was something that Elizabeth made, I think, the building committee and the library board of trustees aware of. I learned a lot last week by going to a design institute, librarians from all across the country, particularly in the New England area. And if there was one key thing that I learned, is they brought architects and engineers together, not to talk to other architects and engineers. There were librarians that they talked to from all over. So what I learned was running libraries is far more than programming and operating. It's about designing, and the space is so vital what librarians do. And so this is a regular thing. This isn't one time. And so we've heard input from Elizabeth, the director of libraries, and different board members, including the chair, Ava. And it may very well be that what the building committee decides is different from what the board of trustees weighs in. I know they've taken some actions, But I'm going to say to the town council, as town manager, that given where we are, while the building committee may do its job, and make the right decision, trying to come in on time and under budget, this is far bigger than a building. This is about the operations of a service that's key for our neighbors who approved at 83 or 84%. And so that has to stay at the forefront. And also the implication to those neighbors based on other changes. So the building committee may make a decision, and I hope you will, to your purpose. But I think the town council has got to be prepared to also listen to the library director, the library board of trustees. Then they've got to consider all of those other issues that ultimately are going to affect this. Very critical issues. So whatever your decision is, I don't think it will end here. And ultimately, and I tease the town council, you know, it's why they're paid big bucks. They don't get paid anything. It's like none of you do except the staff. I admire your commitment. This is a big issue. And given change in circumstances, I think the town council is going to consider whatever your decision is this evening as part of a more complex equation that, yes, may require, maybe it's not the right time to build. We don't know where these prices are going to be in a year or 2 years. Do we expect gas prices to come down eventually? Do we expect food prices to come down eventually? You know, we don't often see where construction prices come down. Should they come down? Maybe they should. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager, and I really want to thank you for all the time and effort you put into clarifying additional funding and for attending that seminar. Very interesting. Mr. Berman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Town Manager, thank you very much. That was helpful. I've been sitting here looking at this schedule of option 1, option 2, option 1A, and taking a look at the cost numbers and everything and trying to see, okay, if we do not reduce the footage, we leave it at 39,445, but we don't go after additional funding, how do we make up that 1.4 million? Well, I've come up with a couple things that I think might work. Number one, we have just reducing in the value engineering, we just have reducing the bridge from 140 to 110 feet. If we eliminate the bridge entirely, that helps. If we take $1 million from FF&E, which is a huge number, and number one, that lets us stay on the option 1 time schedule, not the size, but the time schedule. That means the over amount now, my estimation is roughly $625,000. Now, can we absorb that within the contingencies? Yeah. It's roughly double what is shown in option 1. Maybe. It all depends on what the bids are. We may have to rethink what all becomes alternative bids. But I think that's a alternative we need to look at. Do I like the idea of taking all that money away from FF&E? No. I think I'm leaving them barely enough money for technology, if enough, and I'm not sure of it. But I'm trying to find a way to satisfy all the needs that we have and the competing interests, because there are competing interests here, and I understand that. I understand the argument that 30,000 square feet really isn't enough. And yeah, I get it. I get that sacrifices were made to get down to the 30,000 square feet. So looking at, okay, what are our options here? When I look at the timing, Tom has spelled out here. And if I just stay with the timing for option one, and I make those changes in the cost or the estimates in value engineering and alternative bids, I think it's something that maybe might work. But again, I'm going to ask Tom and our architects, Downtown Architects, is that something that makes some sense? Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Elizabeth, you've got your hand up, and I would like to hear your opinion of what Bob just said as well.
I'm curious about what Bob just said, and I wanted to also ask if we can reevaluate the timeline. Maybe we don't need to be so hard focused on starting at these dates, maybe delaying part of the project, and instead of doing them at the same time, maybe starting with McMahon first, because we've settled on McMahon. Everyone's happy with McMahon, and figuring out Prosser and the additional funding needed for what's looking like Prosser. And I'm just curious about if that is on the table. And I know, as the town manager said about, the conflicting goals here. To me, rushing this project when it's not going to be right, and it's been so long, decades in the making to get this right, if we need to delay by 6 months or a year, I'm curious if that can be put on the table and we could look at those numbers as well.
Well, it's on the table now. How about that? But are you and Board of Trustees, do you know, are you in a position to say that if we could find the money today somehow, you would be satisfied with the schematic design as first presented of Prosser?
When you say first presented, you mean?
The larger plan that we've been looking at.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So would you be willing to meet immediately and try and come up with other alternates, such as the bridge and the furnishings technology, in order to, would you be willing to look at that in order to move ahead with Prosser as it stands with the larger footprint?
Yes.
Without additional funding. That's what I'm getting at. Because the question of seeking additional funding brings us into a whole other schedule, okay? And as Bob said, it would be preferable not to enter that schedule, because then we're chasing costs.
And I guess I would like to know what chasing costs looks like.
Well, there it is, right there on the screen. It's saying that,
meaning if we had if we delayed the project in order to get everything that we were hoping this project would deliver. And I also wanted to bring up, I know that Bob mentioned the technology. We know that that budgeted line is not going to be enough. So we already know that there's more money that's not in this budget to deliver 21st century libraries. We don't know what those numbers are because we're still figuring that out with in concert with our IT department. But there's more unknown costs, and I'm worried about how that will be dealt with as well.
you're talking about unknown technology costs?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I know you guys have been working on that for quite some time.
Yes.
So you're talking about, you want to look at an option where Prosser is even larger than the 30,000 square feet?
Not necessarily, no.
Well, I guess we need to pin that down. In other words, I guess what I'm trying to offer here as a solution is following what Bob Berman said. And thank you for that, Bob. That we try and proceed as quickly as possible without seeking additional funding. Keep the design of the 30,000 square foot crosser, but we have to find that additional, whatever that magic figure is, 1.4 million or so. That, well, let's put it this way. We have to find the 5.5 plus, well, it's probably 6 million plus we're going to have to find. A lot of that we hope would come from the VE list. Okay. And if, as an example, if everything on the VE list was accepted, then we're looking for about another 1.4 million to reach our goal, give or take a little bit. And those suggestions of putting the bridge and the FF&E on an alternate list might get us there. Does that sound like something we should pursue immediately? Or do we not want to go down that road?
I would want to consult with the library board before fully answering that and my staff. You guys go in the other room, please.
Yeah. Okay. So I find it very difficult that the plan developed, the 30,000 square foot, is in question. Okay. I understand what you're saying. Everything you say has validity. It's just that we went through, it's very frustrating for me. We went through a very lengthy process to reach that point of that 30,000 square foot building before anybody was talking budget or VE or, schedule changes or anything.
Mark, we feel confident in the direction of that building that you're talking about, and
Okay.
the original design and where we were moving to figure out that space.
Okay.
Was there more work to do with TSKP? Yes, and we were working through some of those issues, specifically with the community room and the youth spaces. But we feel that we were going to get somewhere that would make our community very happy with our finished project. So I hope I'm understanding your question correctly.
Well,
Because
the
other thing is, if going to referendum is needed, I think we should come to that conclusion quicker rather than later. So I'm not really sure what you're asking.
Well, I was hoping tonight we could come to a conclusion on option 1 or 2 tonight, but I think Bob has brought on, a very interesting sort of compromise, but it involves you being satisfied with the 30,000 square foot plan, understanding there's still some tweaking to go on, there's more design phases with it, and understanding that in order to get there and move ahead now, more items have to be found to put onto an add alternate list. And so, my question is that something you're interested in pursuing? So I'll let you think about that. I'm going to go to Lois while you're thinking about that. Lois?
Thank you. I'm thinking about the $1 million grant and the timing. There are some details about that. We need to move along with the Prosser project if we are actually going to get that grant. I would hate to leave that on the table. It says that it has to be initiated within 18 months, I think. The
Yes.
project has to be initiated within 18 months of bond authorization. We've probably used up 6 of those already, or well, Elizabeth, you probably know the right number, but a few in any case. So I don't think we have a lot of time if we're going to keep that grant on the table.
We
And that
basically
makes a
have,
difference to me as a taxpayer.
well, we basically have no time. I mean, that decision needs to be made tonight, whether we ask the town council to submit a letter of intent. We would do that at their next meeting. It needs to be submitted. It's the first step in the process.
You mean for referendum?
No, Mark, I think
No,
she's saying that the grant we've already received for Prosser requires that we begin construction within a certain period of time.
I'm
not the
sorry.
McMahon
I'm
one.
sorry. I thought you were talking about the McMahon grant.
No, I'm talking about the Prosser grant. If we're talking about flipping and doing McMahon first and then doing Prosser, I think we end up losing the Prosser $1 million.
There is a deadline to
No,
start.
we would still
construction.
regain that grant. We would still keep that. We would get, if we delayed, we would have both grants to reduce that $2 million amount from the 29.2 million, 83% yes vote.
There
I
is a
think-
limit
is
to
that
the
your question,
delay.
Lois?
My point was that I think the rules of the grant are that you have to initiate the project within 18 months of the bond authorization. That's the piece of timing that I'm concerned about. And just to make a brief comment on going back to referendum, I think the way the economy is moving now, I would be very loath to go and seek more money for under referendum. I think they're probably, I know I keep focusing on the bridge, but the bridge is $500,000. That gets us a third of the way to what we need. And I think we ought to be looking at that. Maybe there's an 8% reduction. I don't know how these prices work. Whether you could, maybe it doesn't have to be a full 10% reduction. It just seems to me that we ought to work with what we have, get it done and get it going, or we may never get this library system done. So thank you for listening.
Thanks, Lois.
Lois, you are correct. I am looking at the construction grant guidelines, and it does require an 18-month start date for construction.
And that clock started ticking in April, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we need to keep that in mind, you know, if we're looking at delaying the Prosser project. Deputy Mayor Davis, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to get a little clarification, and I thank the town manager for his comments, and I'm going to call it under the Berman plan. If we are, doing the 1 million with the FF&E and the bridge, could the bridge be a phase 2 of the project? And if so, would we be allowed to seek additional funding for that second phase? Or does that prohibit us? Are we prohibited because of the referendum of seeking additional funds for the bridge if we make it phase 2 of the project? If that makes sense.
Stanley,
I think it would be another clarification that we would need to present to bond counsel. In fact, I'm concerned even with, or if that would qualify as changing the scope of the project as it was presented to our neighbors. The bond indentures, as I'm learning, are pretty restrictive. So we're ultimately going to have to make bond counsel a part of these discussions, and probably more than probably going to have to do it in real time, particularly as town council has to make some final decisions.
thank you. Eva?
Yeah, actually, my question is sort of related to the deputy mayors, and it may be more for Mr. Hawthorne. I think we need to understand the status of items that are cut from the project. For example, if we take something out and we are not funding it, it is no longer in the plan. Does it then become eligible for us to seek outside funding because it is no longer part of the project? Some things have been maybe cut. There are some things we're looking at removing. So I think it also falls in the need for clarification from bond counsel. Because if something is no longer part of the project, does it continue to be governed by the terms of this bond resolution? And I don't think we know that. And I think that's part of our decision-making process. So I think that's something that I would ask that we pursue that information somehow, because it's very hard to make a decision when you don't have all of the facts in front of you. Thanks.
Stanley, do you have any information on that, or?
Yes, I would give the same reply that I did to Deputy Mayor Greg Davis. I think it's on the border. I think it will require clarification. Yeah, cutting parts of the project and then trying to repackage it maybe at an additional time. I'm more leaning, based on everything that I have learned, that it could potentially be violative of the commitment that has already been made to the electorate.
If I could add, I am looking at the decision that the bond council said, and they actually talked about that. If we reduced something, if additional funds are necessary, those additional funds would require the approval of increases to both the appropriation and the bond authorization. So that question was actually asked with regards to Philly, but it's appropriate here. It's number 7 on the list that was sent out earlier today.
Thank you, Nancy. Ava, you have your hand up again? Is that? No. Bob?
Mr. Chair, I didn't really get an answer to my question, so I'm going to ask it again. If we can stay with the 30,000 square feet, but this is one of the ways in which to do it. Is that an acceptable direction to go in for the library board and library director, knowing that we're going to put it on a bid alternate list, and if we have the money, we're going to bring it back? Because I'm looking for a way not to delay this process much longer, because we're already running into timeframe problems, and I'm looking at the, for instance, timeframe mobilization for construction January 7th. Well, that means what? You're going to start tearing down Prosser in January, and you're going to gut McMahon in January. If that's what it means, and I think that's what it means, then that means we're going to have to close McMahon January, February, and March, or January and February for sure. That's going to be a cost which we don't have factored in here. I don't see us pouring concrete in January or February at McMahon, because it's going to be tough for it to cure. So, you know, I'm looking at this, I'm thinking this through, I'm trying to project out what it really means. And I'm trying to reduce the probability of future cost escalation as much as I can. And, you know, so that's why, you know, I'm really looking to see if the library board and staff led by Elizabeth is willing to go with that thought. And I'm asking Tom or somebody from Downs to tell me, am I correct in my presumptions on timeframes? Thank you.
Yeah, a couple quick comments, Mark, if I may.
Sure, go ahead, Tom.
Just to clarify the bridge, the conceptual estimate for the bridge was 426,000. Currently, we are at 231,000 for Scott, your screen share is off there.
Sorry, I hit a button there.
231,000
Lost it.
is for the bridge. I quickly did some math here in the live document under the Berman plan. I like that, by the way, the burning plan. And what I did very quickly was I made an adjustment to the bridge and I added it to the VE log as a move to alternate item.
Mhm.
I also reduced the FF&E and technology budget further in round numbers, basically zeroing it out. I also moved the sunshade item of 113,000 to a proposed alternate list as well. And I don't know all of the details, but I think that can be done as an alternate too without a lot of additional design work. I think it can probably be done in the terms of like a narrative of sorts. And with those couple of adjustments, basically option number one, the 391,000 would be about $250,000, so about 223. So, you know, in very round order of magnitude numbers, we've basically just kind of moved money from one pot, in other words, to another. And we kind of came out with a very similar result of option number one, but we slid things around and we moved things based on our discussions today. So I think it's safe
Did
to
you say you took all of the furniture, FF&E, and all of the technology? You took it all?
Yes,
Okay.
right now it looks like we had about a $1.3 million FF&E and technology budget. And we had an adjustment on the log already. So I basically zeroed that out. I took $900,000 off of that. I was trying to keep the numbers round so the math would kind of work out.
And I think you had already taken some before, is that correct?
Yeah, 150, which was VE item number 56.
Okay.
So I just added 3 value engineering line items for option, I'm sorry, well, it would be like an option number 1B, I guess, or 2A. It would still be the 39,445. But the dates would relatively remain, consistent with what we have on the log here on your screen. And the 400,000 would be in the 225,000, just to give everybody kind of an idea in a range of what we're talking about.
Yeah, that certainly seems like a goal we would want to achieve. But it's all about taking the risk of, what happens when we really don't have the money for furniture or technology. When we're going out to bid, we think we're, don't have it, or after bid day, we still don't have it. I don't know what options we have at that point down the road to find additional funding for those things, where that money might come from, or how it would, we would fill those gaps.
It would have to go back to referendum, Mr. Chair. So while you've got the ability to reduce the scope of the project or expand it for that matter, at the point that those things have to be replaced and it requires additional funding, it will have to go back to referendum. And that's what Nancy was referring to in that answer number 7.
Yes. So that's really a question of, is the library board willing to take that risk of going without those things if we pursued a schedule that went ahead now? If we pursue a schedule that does not go ahead until a post-referendum, a post-successful referendum, then Elizabeth, you were talking about what does that mean in terms of cost? Well, here it is on the screen. We're chasing an additional $1.5 million over and above. It's just due not only to, well, it's more than that, actually. We're not only chasing the 1.4 to build the more square footage, but we're chasing the escalation for delaying this another 4 to 5 months.
Yeah, and the escalation at that point, albeit it's unpredictable and hard to project, I do feel like into the 2023, as we've, the labor escalation has stayed relatively consistent. I think in 2023, that we're going to get a labor escalation on top of all of the material and supply chain escalation that we're dealing with, right? So next year, there's going to be the end of 2022, there's going to be a labor escalation. Prevailing rates are going to go up this July. And then they're going to also go up, in preparation of next year as well.
And we'd be looking at a springtime bid rather than a wintertime bid.
Yeah. Yep.
Which
And
is
to just kind of touch on Bob's comments a little bit, he's right. There is a different element of winter conditions and how we're going to approach that. Starting the project in January versus the original start in September. And a lot of our project approach in starting the project in September was to minimize all of that enabling temporary enclosures, winter conditions and everything. So it would be a different type of winter conditions. I think the September start put some of our envelope stuff in, facade and skin of the building into the winter. Whereas this option would be more foundations. And then he's right, the McMahon selective demolition, there would be some enclosures there as well. So we would need to take a deeper dive into that, see where those monies shuffle from one winter to the next, because we're still going through the winter. It's just the activities would be different. And that's something that we're always trying to manage, because the more you spend on the enabling costs, the less money you can put into your project. So we would need to take a deep dive into that to properly evaluate that. But I do believe there will be a shift in cost from what we had projected originally to where we are now.
Lois?
I just wanted to ask Tom if he hasn't changed the square footage on the chart here, but that would change under option 1, right? It would be the square footage, including the original design, which was then diminished by 10%.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. When I said about $250,000 roughly, yeah.
Second comment that I have is that we are a committee and we represent different elements of the community, and we have different perspectives. And that's on purpose. I get the feeling that we are being governed rightly to a large extent by what the library staff knows to be important for them and for the library and for the town. I think we also have to be thinking about the implications of trying to seek additional money in a referendum. We all bear the same risk, whatever decision we make here. We have to make a decision that's going to be best for the town and that is going to include all the factors we've talked about. But it is our decision as a group. It's not one element of this committee that should have the final decision. So I think to say, will you be satisfied with this square footage? It's good to have that answer, but I'm not sure that's the end of the story. We really all need to think about the various pieces of it. And I must say I'm reassured that this hot potato is going to end in the town council's lap eventually. And that leaves us room to make the best decision that we think, given what we know. Please excuse the speech, but that's what I'm learning from this conversation.
Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm trying to figure out what we accomplish if we delay and go for additional funding and the referendum fails. What have we accomplished? All we accomplished is adding to the cost. That's the problem I'm looking at there. Because the chances of a referendum passing in this economy with what's happening with costs, and you tell me why there's projecting gasoline prices at the pump to be $6 a gallon by the end of August. It's not going to go down from there either. How are we going to get the citizens to approve additional funding, even if council is able to get money elsewhere? I don't see a referendum passing. I don't see a prayer for referendum passing. So I don't know what we accomplish by seeking additional funding, other than kick the can down the road and come up with higher costs. That's why I sat here trying to figure out how do we accomplish what the library people want, which is to keep the 30,000 square foot building and yet still be able to make a decision tonight about how we go forward. And I came up with a suggestion. All right. Tom cut the overage down to $250,000. If we put $250,000 back in FF&E, that brings them back up to about $500,000, I think, Tom?
Right.
Right?
Yeah, yep, and
Okay.
very round order of magnitude.
Round numbers.
Yep.
All right. And that puts us roughly $500,000 over budget, which maybe I think we can live with going out to bid. But that says to me, we need buy-in from the library people that this is a feasible alternative, because seeking additional funding, I'm sorry, it's a pipe dream. Not going to happen in this economy, because if everything revolves around needing a referendum, not going to happen. Thank you.
Chris, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to clarify something. Aren't we kind of saying we need additional funding no matter what to get this project the way we want? Because if we cut all these things and make them add alternates and we don't have the funding, we can't not have technology and furniture. So I'm not saying we should wait, but isn't additional funding part of what we have to do no matter what? I mean, am I missing something?
Well, at this point, our professionals have offered us a way where we don't need additional money. But it seems unacceptable.
I guess that's my point. If we want an acceptable project, I do feel that as someone who's worked on this from the library, and that the cuts to square footage are unacceptable. I do think Bob's proposal makes sense, but I also think, isn't that going to lead us probably to need additional funding? So I'm just making sure I understand that, right? I mean, if we cut out technology and furniture, and even the bridge, what's the alternate to the bridge to get people into the building? The sidewalk? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
Yeah.
I guess to me, one of the things that, that's, it only disturbs me a little when Bob says that, because I'm thinking, okay, let's go with the add alternate, in my mind, approach, keep moving, because we're gambling no matter what, it feels to me. And then, but we still, it feels to me, some way need to find additional funding to pay for those other things.
That's correct. You would probably, if that's the risk that gets taken. Any of those value engineering or add alternate items may not be added back into the project if there aren't sufficient funds. And then you required another referendum. So yes, that's correct.
Bob?
I have a possible solution to that, and I'm not sure that it's exactly feasible. Well, I don't know how it fits in with the referendum need, but I'm trying to push the need for additional funds out of the current 22-23 budget. because spring, March of 2023, council's gonna start budget deliberations. If they appropriate some money from reserves, they can do that. It doesn't have to be for the library project, but it can be capital improvements for the library that I think puts it outside of referendum. So that's one way in which additional funds, not in the project, but outside of it, could be available to cover, as an example, the FF&E, some of the FF&E needs. So, you know, I'm trying to kick the funding need down the road to where it's possible to deal with it in another fiscal year, which can get us out from under a referendum need, but at the same time, not push off making a decision and getting this project moving forward at the same time. Thank you.
Ava?
What Bob is bringing up is exactly what I was asking. If the stuff is not in the project anymore, then how does that work? I think the town manager and I are actually agreeing here that we need to hear from bond counsel precisely how this works with some of these different scenarios. We can't make a decision without those facts. If we are barred from any kind of funding in the future for anything that's mentioned here, then clearly that doesn't work. If something isn't funded in this project, exactly how does that status work? Without knowing those things from legal counsel, we can't make a decision. And not that the library board is making the decision, because none of us vote.
Mr. Town Manager, anything to add to that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I think we've got the answer already to Mr. Berman's last suggestion, and that's in question and answer number 1 to bond counsel. He and these are his words: simply stated, additional cost are costs that are in addition to or exceed those authorized by the resolution. So even if we took funds from our own reserves, they fall into additional costs because it would require an additional appropriation by the town council and by voters at referendum. So that bond indenture, we're kind of locked in.
Thank you. So where do we stand, people? Do we need more information in order to make a decision? You know, a go, no-go decision on any of these options?
Mark?
Yes, Chris.
Yeah, I am in agreement with Ava. I need some more information. I listened carefully and I know what I don't know, but I think I definitely know what I need to know in order to make an informed decision. So I am in the lane of, I'd like to get some more information before I can.
Can you be specific, Chris?
As it relates to whether or not we can get or receive additional funding once the project gets started.
I think that's been asked and answered in terms of it needing a referendum to use that money. Is that true, Stanley?
Yes. And after we got the opinion from bond counsel, I communicated with the town attorney, who of course was in the loop because the communications came through him. And the way that I phrased it was, it seems that in almost any given circumstance of any significant change whatsoever, whether funding, scope of project that ultimately requires additional funding, it has to go back to referendum. You will notice that in the 7 answers, if you've had a chance to look at it, and if you haven't, I encourage you to read it thoroughly. And the questions are also listed in the email that all of you have received. But bond counsel was very careful, almost in the last sentence for each answer, the various scenarios, all that we could think of, many of which have come up this evening. It was requires bond authorization by the town council and by voters at referendum. Almost without exception, the only exception that I can think of is being able to reduce or expand the scope of the project, and even listed that as something that the building committee could consider and take action on. But if in the end, you're looking to put any of that back in, that requires funding from whatever source, it's got to go back to town council and referendum.
Chris, did you have some other specifics you were looking for?
No, I think my question was answered, but I'm still in need of additional information to provide me with clarity.
You know, can you be specific about what kind of additional information? You know, I think we're all in trouble here trying to make a decision, and you know, whatever we can pin down as information that'll help us would be helpful.
No.
Okay, all right. I am willing to take. I'm going to throw this out there. I'm willing to take one more week and have a special meeting a week from tonight, if we can get somewhere in that week. And to me, it would be pursuing the Berman option, where we stick to our go-ahead schedule, making every effort to find money to increase the square footage from this lowest square footage plan. I don't know where that money's coming from, okay? But you know, I'm willing to spend a little bit more time working closely with all the library people in doing that, in trying to find that. And I think we can afford another week in the schedule. Whether we can afford another Wednesday night out of our lives, I don't know. But you know, I'm throwing that out there, and I'll listen to further comments. Bob, got your hand up.
Yeah, just very quickly. If we got to go referendum to take money out of reserves for this, that's not going to affect the taxpayers in terms of increasing their taxes. Number one, that then makes it a possible passage of a referendum, much more so than if we're asking for more money from the taxpayers. It also pushes it off from fall of 2022 to really the fall of 2023. And hopefully by then things will be at least a little bit better. Our current reserves are roughly 22% of the budget, which is at least 4% higher than what we really should have, and the recommended minimum by bonding agencies is roughly 15%. So, you know, I think the possibility of getting additional money that way, even if we have to go to referendum, exists, and I think it's a more plausible scenario than the one we're looking at now. We're trying to go to referendum this fall. That scares me.
Are you suggesting that that referendum would be in November?
Well, the referendum for take money out of the reserves
Yes.
would be in the 2023-2024 fiscal year, which is November 2023, not 2022.
So we would not be able to bring it to referendum this year.
No.
Well, that's
council could, but I'm not sure that they're going to be willing to do it this year.
well, I think a big question would be how much, and I think if we take another week, we could explore what that figure is and find out what the options are for that referendum and
that's a good possibility.
And how palatable that is all around as a possibility, but it's worth exploring. Nancy?
Yeah, two things. First of all, a fall of 2024 start date would violate the grant that we've already been awarded, because we had 18 months. So we need to be careful with that time frame. But I guess I really wanted to get some clarification, maybe from Downs. What we're looking at here in terms of the various options, obviously time is of the essence. And if I remember correctly earlier, Tom said that before we were at 360 for the over under. And now we're at 391. So we've added an additional $30,000 just by not doing anything in that time period. And I just want to be sure that that is what Tom said and what impact another week would make to
That
that
is
number.
That is accurate, Nancy. So we did make an escalation projection for the last few weeks up to a month. So another week would in terms of the escalation calculated by time, it would increase that number. We'd probably be approaching the $400,000 range. So yeah, every day counts in this process. It's unfortunate that that's the climate that we're in, but it's reality.
Tom, can you explain that in terms? I'm sure we're gonna get questions about that. So laying a week could cost tens of thousands of dollars. Did I understand that right?
Yeah, I mean, right now, like our industry is projecting a 2022 escalation overall for 2022, somewhere between 7 and 9%. But historically, for years and years, 3% construction escalation from year to year was plenty to anticipate and to cover, going from one year to the next. Right now, we're trying to predict markets and different manufacturers that escalation is, quite frankly, all over the board, from 15 to 20% to 3 to 5%. So we're trying to make an average projection. So if you said 2022 was an average of between 7 and 9, you could look at, what is that per month? What is that per 6 months? So the factor of time right now needs to be considered. I hope that helped answer that question. Very similar to going to the gas pump yesterday versus going tomorrow.
Lois?
Thank you, Mark. I would request that if we are going to delay a week to make a decision, I realize that this puts even more pressure on the library staff, but I think if the staff could work some more with TSKP and see if there are ways to even out the floor plan or the size diminishment, if there were any places there where we could make some progress toward agreement on size or furniture placement or whatever, that would be helpful to go at the same time as looking to eliminate or shift items in the budget.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent suggestion. If we take more time, then those efforts have to be made. We want to please all the library people. I've always used the analogy that trying to do a construction project's like skydiving, and we're in the plane and we're not landing the plane. We got to jump out and we got to pack the chute properly. There's no other choice. The plane took off at referendum, and we got to keep fueling the plane while we're waiting. So I know people are saying, let's not rush into this. I don't think anything about this has been rushed. I think there's been a lot of time and effort and a lot of people hours spent on it. I think the process has been very thorough. So we find ourselves in an unhappy position. So compromises have to be made, or we scrap everything. You know, this is, I think Deputy Mayor Davis said, we got to find some compromises and do this. And that's why I'm willing to invest, you know, a week of some charrette here to do that. Eva?
Yeah, I think I agree with Lois. I certainly would be the last one to ask the staff to keep working under the circumstances that they've had to put up with. But I don't think there has been enough time since when we received these, the latest plans. And I don't think it's given the staff time to talk with TSKP adequately and understand exactly whether or not, you know, there are different adjustments that could be made. Our function is not a side in a debate or a participant in a fight or anything else. Speaking for the library board, we have a statutory responsibility to represent every single person in this town and to seek the best solution to provide them the most complete service available that we can possibly arrange. So we are simply pursuing the goal that this library will serve everyone. I don't think that a week is going to really have a huge impact on our timetable. And I think we should take that time to pursue the questions that we have about the floor plans, because there's some decision making there that the staff might want to discuss with TSKP. And I think it gives us time. I still think that I have a question for the town manager, because I think we're getting muddled on some of what we're asking. And the question of what is or is not included in the project, if something is or is not included on those alternate lists of any kind, still needs a clarification from council. So I think those would provide us the time, if we waited that week, to look into those things.
I would love it if we can meet in person to do these things. I think we'll accomplish a lot more if we can all sit around a table and do it that way instead of you know, in this Zoom fashion. Is that a possibility? Is that an impossibility with anybody to do that?
Chair, we have hybrid ability, and we can use either council chambers or the council room 5 to be able to do that, so that it is in a hybrid fashion. So those that are not comfortable or unable to participate in person can still do it by, still do it remotely.
Well, I would suggest we take that route. I think it's just going to be a lot more productive. This is a very important thing that we interact, get the most done.
I agree. I'm willing to meet personally.
Does that sound like a plan? If we can arrange something and meet again a week from tonight?
For me, it has to be hybrid, but I would think it's a wonderful plan.
You know, I'd really like to shoot for you know, even if we can do it as soon as Friday or Monday.
Would that conversation include or preclude time for the staff to talk to TSKP and get some further clarification on the plans?
You know, let's ask TSKP their availability to do that as the first mission, and then we can follow up with a, you know, with more of the schedule budget items, you know, beyond plan items. Does that make sense? Richard, what do you think?
So I was just chatting to Jeanette, who should be part of this discussion. She's available on Monday.
Okay. All right. So maybe we can get an early start on Monday or early
Yes.
afternoon, and, you know, everybody block out a bunch of time to do that.
Almost any time for TSKP except early morning, probably late morning, and for the rest of the day would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Like Lois, I would also need the hybrid option. In person is just not medically a possibility.
All right. So Nancy, can you set us up for what might be available in one of those places? Probably conference room 5 is.
Yeah, conference room 5, yes, and I actually even know how to run the equipment, so.
Very good, very good. So maybe shoot for late morning and bring us all lunch and or
Now, are we talking a building committee meeting or are you talking like just staff? Because if you have more than a certain number of people on the building committee, it becomes a public meeting and I
I
don't
was
know.
about to ask that. Yeah, well, we have to.
You know,
open
if you
up-
want to follow up with a public meeting, maybe on Wednesday to make a decision, I don't know. You tell me.
Well, I really want to open this up to all committee members. So I guess we need to call a special meeting, correct?
So it would be a special meeting and it would be public.
And the public, yes, yes. Any objections or other ideas as we do this?
Yeah, let me make a comment, Mr. Chair.
Monday is a Juneteenth holiday. Are we
Um,
for our schools?
Correct.
I don't know if everyone has the ability to attend on, yeah, Monday's the holiday.
Monday's the holiday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So Nancy's going to send us all a link in case we need the hybrid option.
Oh, yeah, she'll take care of all
Yes.
that, but.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That's problematic then, to hold it on a holiday.
Could we do it on Tuesday?
Yes,
I can't make Tuesday.
we're not all gonna be able to make whatever we choose. It's, you know, we're all kind of under the gun here, so. But I think we need to come back together again a week from tonight. With the findings of this meeting. And hopefully be able to have some idea of how we're moving forward.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of suggestions.
Yes, please, Stanley.
From what I was hearing from Chair Biffer, what I heard was giving the staff an opportunity to have a discussion with, I guess, the architectural firm, which could be a more informal meeting. I believe that you ought to consider, if you do a public meeting, and I do think it needs to be at a similar time for those who are used to your meeting in the evenings, including some counselors who normally participate. And I believe more counselors would have been here today, except they had a conflict. But I also think for your decision-making meeting, as opposed to a working meeting where staff is giving their ideas, I think we should invite bond counsel to be here in real time for your decision. I would not want to invite bond counsel because they're pretty expensive, among other reasons, to have to sit through a working session. So I think you should consider maybe bifurcating.
Is there any objection then to having a work session with staff and TSKP on Monday?
Monday's fine for TSKP.
And staff, or? Elizabeth, does that work? Monday?
It's up to Elizabeth. It's not a holiday for us.
That's Elizabeth's call. She and her staff are technically not working that day, so that's.
No,
up to them.
we are. It's not a town holiday.
Oh, it's not? Okay, then fine.
Not yet,
Uh,
maybe
your
next
call.
year.
So that works, a working session? Okay, and then if there's no objection, we could follow up on Tuesday with another work session, a limited work session.
And then a meeting on Wednesday, Mark? Is that what you're
meeting- and then a
suggesting?
meeting
And the
on Wednesday.
Wednesday meeting would include bond council?
I suppose, well, yes, I will take the town manager's lead on that. You know, unless we come to some conclusions where we don't have questions for bond council, but, you know, on Tuesday. But I think it would be best to be prepared to have bond council there. All right, so we'll have to communicate what could work on Tuesday then. How many committee members are we limited to, Nancy, before we have to call it a meeting?
You can't have a quorum, so it would be 4. Or no, 5? 5.
Yeah, we need 6 for a quorum, so we could have,
Yeah.
5.
Or
That
you could
seems-
just make it a special meeting and have everybody who wants to be there.
Well, again, I'm following the town manager's lead on this, and to be fair to the public, it's not a normal thing. So let's keep it a working session, and we'll limit it to 5. It's those who are interested in coming, please let me know. We can have more than I mean, we can have non-voting members as many as we want, correct? We're limited to 5 voting members to be there.
I think yes, but I would like to just reconfirm that with the town attorney.
Okay. All right. All right, sounds like a plan. It's only 9:30, okay? This is going to be a shorter meeting than the town council subcommittee meeting last week. All right, any more comments for the architects or the construction managers?
Deputy Mayor has his hand up.
Thank you. Yes, Greg.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And this may be late, but I was just going to suggest, in the spirit of transparency, I think it might be advisable to have a special meeting to allow everyone to attend, because we've heard arguments from people saying that they haven't been involved, they're missing out on things. And I just think it's important that if we're having a transparent process, that everyone be able to participate and either listen or watch in the meeting.
So you don't feel that our meeting a week from tonight would satisfy that, where we disclose what went on the previous 2 days in work sessions?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so you're talking about 3 meetings, Monday, Tuesday being.
Yes, a work session Monday, a work session Tuesday, and then a public special meeting Wednesday evening.
Okay.
Does that sound like we're? Okay, thank you. Any other hands? I don't see any other hands. All right, so let's move on. Nancy, do you have any purchases or invoices?
No, I don't.
You don't. Okay, so we're talking about future meetings, our regular meetings, 29th of this month and July 13th. Special meeting, 6 p.m. Wednesday, the 22nd. If you cannot attend, please let Nancy or me know. Appreciate
What
that.
time will be on, I'm sorry, Mark, what
6.
time will be the meeting on
6, like
Tuesday?
our normal meetings.
On the meeting on Tuesday?
No,
No,
I'm talking
Wednesday.
Wednesday, special meeting Wednesday. Tuesday, we did not set a time for the Tuesday meeting. Can we do that at 1 o'clock Tuesday? Nancy,
Okay, I'll schedule it.
conference room 5.
Do we have a meeting time on Monday?
Elizabeth's call.
Maybe like
Did we establish a Monday time? I thought it was.
I thought Monday was just gonna be that's the staff and TSKP,
Staff and
right?
TSKP, yes.
Yeah,
Time.
is there a time that works for you, Elizabeth?
What time works for your team?
And anytime really.
About 10:30.
10:30?
10:30?
Okay,
Great, thank you.
thank you.
Sorry, when is Tuesday? I couldn't hear through all of that.
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
10 o'clock. Thank you.
1.
1.
1 o'clock.
All right. We're going to do comments from the committee. And Councilor DeBeetham Brown, I see your hand up. Let me get comments from the committee and then I'll get to you. Any hands up from the committee?
Just me.
Bob, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'm heartened by the fact that we've narrowed things down a little, and I want to reiterate again, we really can't keep pushing the can down the road on a decision. We need to be prepared next Wednesday to make a decision what we're doing, the direction we're going in, because forget about the cost issue. The time frame is becoming more and more crucial. We can't keep pushing off when we're going to do what. And remember, design documents are a freeze until we accept the schematic design stuff, which means construction documents can't start till after design documents are 99% finished. So we're chasing the tail. We have to make a decision this coming week. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councilor DeBeetham Brown, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm just speaking as Joe Public right now. I think with the library, as much as we're spending, as much that's happening to cost right now, as we came out and we voted for this in referendum, I personally feel like whatever meeting is being had now, I do believe that that should be open to the public. And I am going to request to be at those meetings that you guys are having. I think it's really important that we get this information firsthand, that we understand exactly what's happening with this project, especially since that we've heard already that it's possibly over. And for council that's getting information from bond counsel, I really believe that our residents need to have an understanding of exactly what's going on and not hearing after the fact, not hearing recaps after the conversations have been had. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents out there, because I know when it comes up again that you guys will hear me say this over and over again, because I'm going to be very consistent with this. We had this conversation in subcommittee. We had a conversation at council, and I think it's extremely important that we are as transparent as possible with all that is taking place right now. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. All right, let's move to public comments. Nancy?
The town manager has his hand up.
I'm sorry, I missed you again,
Okay.
Stanley.
Yeah, I was actually just trying to get Nancy's attention. Councilor Curtin.
Got
is
it.
in the attendee list, if you can promote him to panelist.
Here he is.
All right, you're late to the game, Councilor Curtin, but I'll
Oh,
give you
no,
the floor.
actually.
No, he's been in
Mr.
the
Chair, I've
audience.
been
He's
here
been there.
juggling
He's been
2
patient.
meetings. Juggling 2 meetings. This is an important, and I just want to first start off by thanking you all for your commitment and dedication. I think it's very important, and once again demonstrate how our neighbors are committed to this process and what you guys are doing. But I first want to make a comment. Number one, I appreciate the comments from our town managers and what he said. I support his comments. Elizabeth and Allison from staff, I also appreciate their comments and passion, because the one thing that I think it's important is to understand when the light goes out and the building committee goes away and the council gets back to other business and the town manager and everyone else, the library director and staff, along with everyone else, the committee and so on, will have to deal with the fallout and the expectations from the public. So that's important. So the role that they play in making sure that this project is the project that will meet the needs of today and the future is very important. So I just want to put that down there. And I think all the discussions that I've been hearing, and obviously we're in a very uncharted waters right now with cost overrun. We're talking about the challenges that we're seeing within the economy with the construction costs and so on. And I use an example. I went into a store this weekend and I walked out with the merchandises in my hands. And part of the reason for that was everyone is feeling that impact when I go to the gas station and so on. So I want to keep that at the forefront, that these are challenges. And the worst thing for us to do is to try to push ahead, which I know everyone is committed to getting this project completed. But how we move forward, I believe, is very important. And to be frank, it's better to sometimes throw your hands up and say, hey, it's not the right time, instead of trying to cut here and cut there and then finish a product that later down where they're going like, oh boy, we made some bad moves here and there. I think that through the referendum, the lobbying and reaching out to the public and all those sessions, and the public have spoken, I think the product that was on the table, everything that was presented, I believe that we should commit to that. And if we can't move forward right now, I think we need to pause. The question that came up a few nights ago at the meeting with the chairman is, what is the total cost so far to date that we have spent on this project with designs and so on? I think that's important. That's an important part of the conversation. And I would prefer to lose a few million here than to spend 30 or $29 million and not have a complete project that we're questioning ourselves 2, 3, 4 years down the line. But thank you for the time, and I appreciate the work that you all are doing and your commitment. Have a good night.
Thank you, Counselor. Let's see. Any other
You have
hands?
Sten Casperson.
Okay, we're into public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for all being there. You have a hell of a decision to make. I will just offhand say, as a member of the public, I'd be willing to help anybody any way I can in the decision process. Moving on to my comments. Given that this building is probably going to be shorter, it's going to be narrower, I really urge the contractor, TSKP, to move this building foundation away from Tungus, away from Mountain Avenue, get the noise as far away from the building as possible. Number two, this may sound radical, but Tom and Downs will understand this. If it's possible to purchase and store long lead items that you know that you want, they're going to make it difficult to maintain schedule, consider buying them or putting in the purchase agreements now. If you actually have to store something, you've got the whole Riley lot to do it on. Third item, I heard about 35,000 square feet as an initial goal. Honestly, I don't recall ever hearing that specific number. What I heard was use the Prosser site with its constrictions, have a budget, see what you can put on the plot. To think of even putting 45,000 square foot building on that lot is just ridiculous unless you go far more than 2 levels. Item 4. I thought I'd be the first one to suggest this, but Elizabeth beat me to it. There is a massive atrium on the current plans. The volume in that atrium is huge. You need square footage. You need to loosen up space. You're concerned about people running into people. Well, extend the second floor over much, if not all of the atrium. There is more than enough glass on the east side and the south side to make that still a very welcoming entrance. Item 5, the community room. Hey guys, listen, it's being compacted. Elizabeth, the library board, they've all said, we want that to be a very versatile room. We want to be able to change from something at 8:30 in the morning to something at 10 o'clock to something at 1 o'clock. How do you do that in a hurry? You need to have maximum flexibility. One of the problems that you're facing is it's set up, it's being shown by TSKP as a 100 plus or minus stacked room, stuffed in facility. That's not what you want. Suggestion, it's been made before, but you got to be serious now. If you have a lecture, if you have a presentation, if you have a gathering where you anticipate a lot of people are going to want to sit, put their hands up, ask questions, use the Human Services Facility great room for those kinds of presentations. The thought had been, okay, there'll be a separate entrance for the community room. People will come, go into the community room, leave. The rest of the library is locked up. Don't not look for that flexibility. Everything is there. All the presentation, all the chairs, et cetera, et cetera. You got to give that serious thought under your current conditions. Last comment to Downs. Their last slide with the dates and the options is tremendous thinking. This group ought to be meeting in person as much as possible. They ought to be working with whiteboards. They ought to have pencil and paper in front of them. They ought to be able to go back and forth in their communications. Downs is trying to help you as much as possible with this one slide. Option 1, option 2, option 1A, dates this, dates that. Take advantage of this. You've got 3 important meetings coming. Make them as transparent, as informative, and as working level as possible. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ursula Dang.
Hello, this is Ursula Dang, 11 Pent Road. First of all, I just wanted to commend Elizabeth Lane. I really appreciate everything that you have been doing to stick up for the great library that we hope we can have. I'm really grateful to all the work that you're doing, because I know you're doing this on top of trying to continue running the library right now. And there's a lot of pressure to make this a smaller library, and I don't know, I guess I'm frustrated and a little disappointed. From the beginning, there was reaction to the building's design, and a lot of those reactions just there was really no changes made, even though, I mean, we were told that it was just in a schematic process, and there was still time for things to change, but really none of the reactions that were made in the beginning were really addressed, except for the color of the exterior. And now on top of that, we're being told that we have to reduce the size, and we're getting less than we wanted for this. Prices go up. Prices will always go up. I think 10 years from now, if we have a facility that doesn't meet the needs that we were expecting this library to meet, 10 years from now, we'll look back on this process and go, $1.4 million maybe wasn't really all that much, because 10 years from now, prices will be even that much more. If you design it smaller, that's not something that you're going to be able to change. Maybe foregoing furniture for now would be a good idea. I mean, I'm happy to sit on the floor and read to the kids. And if people want chairs in the building, then maybe they'll find a way to fund chairs. I'm all for eliminating the bridge. And in fact, maybe we want to look at that balcony as well, because the only real reason that balcony was there is sort of an extension of the bridge to create a walkway up to the side. So maybe you could consider whether or not the balcony is necessary. If it's, I don't know if there's any other purpose for having that balcony on that side. I know a couple of meetings ago, I listened to Elizabeth pleading for bigger windows, and was told in that meeting, and that kind of floored me, that no, we really don't need bigger windows. I think that our librarians really know what we need to provide the services that our community needs. And I think that our community, it just doesn't make sense to me that the library should have to bear the brunt of this problem that we're having now, that prices are going up, there's supply chain issues, there's inflation, and well, why is it that the library has to suffer for this? Maybe we can work something out as a whole town. Maybe it should go for referendum. Or maybe there should be some other ways that we can find to reduce costs. But I'd really like to see some better answers than just, the library just has to be smaller. That can't be the only solution to this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Linda Pagani.
Thank you. I have been going to many of these meetings, as I said many times. And I just wanted to speak to the transparency issue, because I think, having attended all these, I do think the process has been very transparent. And while I don't doubt that members of the public tell counselors that they don't think this is transparent, that is human nature. Any town I've ever lived in, I've heard my fellow community members say they didn't know about this, they didn't know about that. The public has to take responsibility to get this information. These meetings are open. I completely understand people who don't have this kind of time, the way I'm fortunate enough to be able to sit here tonight and take in all this good information. But I think it's too easy when people say that. And I don't think it's a valid, I'll call it criticism. I'm not criticizing, but I don't think it's a valid criticism of this committee. So anyone who wants to find out about it, you just have to attend. And if you can't attend, there are minutes of the meetings. So I guess what I would like to say too is to just thank you all so much. I can't imagine to be in your position right now with what you're facing, but you know, as an engaged member of the public, I really appreciate everything you're doing, as well as all the staff members. And again, I've said this before, I'm a big library supporter. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public that hasn't had a chance to speak? No more hands, Chair.
I'm muted. Sorry about that. Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, everybody from the public for attending and speaking. And with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
By Mr. Berman, seconded by, who's seconding the motion to adjourn?
Second.
Jesse.
Thank you, Jesse. All in favor? Hands? Okay, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your patience.